Applications Committee meeting on Thursday, 7th of September. Can I remind everyone present that this meeting will be recorded and that the recording will be subsequently made available for public listening? And can I remind folks to either turn off your mobile phones or put them on silent, please? Lucy, can we have Sederunt and apologies, please?
Good morning, everyone. We have 18 members present. We are quorate. And so far, I have apologies from Councillor Drybrough and Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Fairbairn is not present, but may be along later in the meeting.
Thank you, Lucy. Declarations of interest? John?
Thank you, Chair. I declare an interest on item 5 on the agenda that I know one of the objectors, but the interest was such that I would remain in the meeting.
Thanks for that. Elaine?
Yeah, just to advise that I have attended a meeting of Dumfries Retail Association where one of these applications were discussed, but that all councillors present made it very clear that we were only listening and that no predetermination would take place.
Thanks, Elaine. John Martin?
Just exactly the same.
Thank you. Jane Maitland?
I have an interest in item 9. I own the property involved.
Thank you. And
thank you. Just to declare the same as Councillor Martin and Councillor Murray.
Thank you. And I have a declaration on agenda item 8, BLACKADDIE Road, SANQUHAR. I met with the applicant a long number of years ago when he was considering how he might develop his site, but that will not preclude me from taking part in the deliberations when we come to that agenda item. If there are no other declarations of interest, can we go to agenda item 3, which is the minute of meeting of 17th of August for approval? Is this a true record of the meeting? Okay, thank you. In that case, we come to agenda item number 4, applications eligible for speaking. This is an application to develop land. Sorry, Lucy, can you take us through the procedure and the processes for today, please?
The Planning Applications Committee will consider each application in turn as detailed on the agenda. The case officer or other appointed officer will make a short presentation addressing the determining issues accompanied by digital images. Any late information, amendments or corrections will be reported at this time. Members may ask questions of officers following the presentation on points of clarification. The Chairman has been provided with a list of eligible representatives who have registered to speak at this meeting within the period specified in Council policy. No other persons will be allowed to speak. The Chairman will individually invite those who have registered in advance to speak to make their presentation, after which they may be questioned by committee members. No questions may be asked of members. The order of eligible parties being heard will be as follows: third parties objecting to an application, third parties supporting an application, statutory consultees objecting to an application, elected members of Dumfries and Galloway Council who are not members of the Planning Applications Committee. Such members should withdraw from the committee chamber after making the presentation. Applicants or their agents. Representatives have been placed in alphabetical order, and a copy of the public speaking list is available from the committee officer taking notes of our proceedings. Presentations will be strictly limited to 3 minutes per person, excepting for national and major developments, which by their very nature are more complex, where the time limit will be 5 minutes. The Chairman of the committee will ask you to come to a conclusion if you take too long. Representatives are encouraged to use the time allotted to clarify any points they consider material and address the determining issues. Certain matters are not normally material planning considerations and will not be taken into account by the Council when deciding on a planning application. Representatives should not raise any new matters without explaining why they were not raised earlier with the case officer. Please do not repeat what is in the report, as members will have already read the report. After all the representations have been heard, the meeting is then in formal session, and no members of the public gallery may address the committee from the public gallery. The Planning Applications Committee will then proceed to determine the application, or, where appropriate, agree a recommendation to be made to full Council, who will determine the application.
Thank you, Lucy. And in every agenda item today that are speakers, it's a 3-minute window. There are no major applications to consider. We come to agenda item 4 now, which is an application to develop land without compliance with condition 9 attached to planning permission 00/P/3/0166 to allow non-food class 1 retail use and ancillary class 3 cafe at unit 4, CUCKOO Bridge Retail Park, Glasgow Road, Dumfries. Reference number is 17/0123/full. It is a full application. Please note the applicant is New River, not Next. The recommendation is to refuse. The reward is North West Dumfries, and case officer is Andrew Robinson. Andrew's not here today, so Robert Duncan will deal with this application. Robert, when you're ready, will you take us through your presentation, please?
Thank you, Chair. First thing, obviously, to point out is I'm going to summarise Andrew's report as best I can, but I'm not going to go into great detail at this point. So, as usual, there will be an opportunity for members to ask me questions at the end of this presentation. The first point really to make is quite a simple one. This application is in respect of Unit 4 of CUCKOO Bridge Retail Park, and this is the location plan that shows that unit. It's highlighted, as you can see, and we'll come on to the photographs. It's an application made under the terms of Section 42 of the Revised Town and Country Planning Act of 1997, but we'll come on to that in more detail. So that's the location of the unit you're talking about. The existing location and site plan, similarly, this is showing it in relation to the other units. The parent permission, looking at the report, is itemised at 1.3 in that report. So it's the application reference 00P30166. What is in focus here is condition 9 of that planning permission, which is as per page 10 of the report, just at the top. You can see what it says. It says the primary use of each of the retail units shall be the sale of bulky goods, for example, DIY, hardware, furniture, carpets, electrical and gardening goods, and not the sale of clothing, footwear, toys, sports goods, sportswear, pets, pet products, books or newspapers, magazines. The net retail floor space of any electrical unit shall not exceed 910 square metres, and no more than one such unit should be permitted within the development. So the application is framed on that basis. Existing ground floor plan is as shown. This is in respect of Unit 4, obviously. And then we move on to, if I get back to the right slide, the existing elevations. As you can see, a series of fairly standard retail park elevations as they are at the moment. The unit is occupied, and we'll come on to that in the photographs. And then you have the proposed elevations and floor plans. Members will note that there is a difference here, and there is a physical change to this unit. Now, there's a separate planning application, and that is referenced in the background to the case. I'm trying to have a quick look to see exactly where that is. 1.6, thank you, covers that, and that is presently progressing under delegated powers. So that really does two things, as well as actually affecting the external appearance of the building. It's introducing an additional mezzanine floor, so expanding the retail floor space offering at Unit 4 at CUCKOO Bridge. That's not been determined, obviously, at this point in time. Moving to the actual photographs, this is a view of Unit 4 as it is at the moment. You'll notice that it's occupied by Storey carpets. And as we understand it, they are presently able to operate there in compliance with condition 9 of that permission. Moving around, these were taken last week, so they're quite recent. You can see Unit 4 in the distance. You have Laura Ashley next to it, and on the other side, I think it's Pound Stretcher. It is Pound Stretcher occupies that unit there. And then as you progress along, you have Dunelm. So all of the units at CUCKOO Bridge at the moment are presently occupied. You'll obviously notice the existing car parking. There's no charging for that car parking just now. And as you move around, this is looking towards B&M at the end of the offering at CUCKOO Bridge Retail Park as it stands. This is getting closer back, so you can see the home base unit. And this is getting closer to the Costa Coffee outlet as you come into the roundabout access here, which takes you down there near KFC. This is a view. This was taken by the case officer much earlier this year. So this is the rear of Unit 4, and it's showing servicing arrangements and the elevational detail of that. In summary, members are looking at an application made in terms of section 42. Now, looking at 1.5 of the report, the application seeks permission to allow non-food open Class 1 retail use and an ancillary Class 3 cafe to be sold from the unit. I've mentioned by virtue of the other planning application that's being determined under delegated powers but running concurrently that you're looking at an expanded retail offering at this location in real terms as well. Your options are obviously the recommendation, which is to refuse, but in terms of a section 42 application, you should note you are not amending the existing permission. That would still exist regardless of whatever decision you may or may not make today in respect of Unit 4. It is open for you as an alternative to the recommendation to decide to grant permission subject to conditions as you see fit, as is the case with all other planning applications. And in that respect, you could effectively decide to replace the existing condition 9 with a new one, but that is entirely at members' discretion, and we'll probably come on to that in greater detail. It's something certainly that the applicant was keen to flag up with elected members, so I've got no hesitation in doing that in this presentation. Looking at the actual key issues within the report, the basis of the sequential test that has been done is on the basis of Next as a potential occupier of this unit. So in essence, they have looked at the various options and undertaken that sequential test. And you can see that in some of the supporting information which is within the report. We've presented that in section 1. So you have a planning and retail statement at 1.7, you have a transport assessment at 1.8. Really, in terms of determining issues, the case officer summed that up quite well at 4.3 in your report. So that's at the foot of page 21 and the top of page 22. So the determining issue in the assessment of this application is whether the non-compliance with condition 9 of 00P30166, the parent permission to allow open Class 1 non-food retail use and ancillary Class 3 cafe use from Unit 4 at this location is acceptable or not. And it further continues, you have to make that determination in terms of section 25 of the Act, so in accordance with the terms of the development plan, unless material considerations indicate otherwise. Obviously, the weight to give to material considerations rests with the decision maker. Looking at the pertinent issues in this case, I would draw members' attention at this stage to 3.1b, the representation section, and the third bullet point there, which was looking at the option within the Lorburn Centre. We'll come on to that further while we're talking about the sequential assessment. In response, the applicant's agent made the point at 3.2, so if you're looking at the bottom of page 20 and the top of page 21, you have the applicant's response. So what they're saying is Next have appraised that option and considered that the space being offered has poor visibility and prominence. Further, the incremental sales are considered to be so low that they do not even pay for the shop fitting costs of fitting out the new space, and Next acquisitions have to achieve a payback within 24 months, which wasn't achieved there. So they ruled that out as being suitable. When I look at the sequential assessment in the body of the officer's report, so looking at 4.14 primarily to 4.23, I think the key conclusions that are drawn from that are as stated at 4.22. So, and forgive me for reading this out, but essentially the application has been submitted as a larger retail unit. It's required for Class 1 retail use, and it's not considered by the applicant that such a unit with that level of floor space required exists in the town centre at present. And that's a key part of them, that their justification for seeking an alternative unit. However, it's concluded that it's been demonstrated through representations that a unit with the required floor space that would meet the stated retailer's requirements is available within the Lorbrun Centre, but by virtue of the existing unit that Lorbrun occupies and the adjacent Poundland unit. The case officer concludes, whilst it's recognised that case law has determined that it would be unreasonable for the planning authority to stipulate a site that is considered by a developer to be unsuitable, it has considered that it has not been demonstrated why the proposed floor space in the Lorbrun Centre would, using a point in the Sheffield judgment, compromise its business model. And basically, following on that paragraph at the end, it says, in conclusion, it is considered that it has not been demonstrated why a sequentially more preferable location with the floor space required for the proposed development would not be suitable. The report also considers retail impact at 4.24 to 4.31, and that's looking at the impact on the vitality and viability of the qualitative and quantitative deficiency. It doesn't raise any issue. It doesn't have any, difficulty in accepting what is put forward there. It also considers the proposed ancillary Class 3 use, the cafeteria, within the proposed Unit 4 at CUCKOO Bridge as well, and the cumulative impact and precedent as well as the loss of bulky goods that would arise as well. The overall conclusion at 4.41 I think is key, and it's considered the application to develop land without compliance with condition 9 attached to that planning permission is unacceptable, in that it has not been demonstrated that a more sequentially preferable site available in the Lorbrun Centre with a floor space that would meet the stated requirements would not be suitable. It's also considered it's not been satisfactorily demonstrated why the proposed location within an enlarged unit would compromise the business model to such an extent that it would be unsuitable in comparison to the proposed unit, which would require similar setup costs at the proposed location. And on that basis, the proposal is considered to be contrary to policy ED6 of the Council's Local Development Plan and Scottish Planning Policy from June 2014, and there are not considered to be any other material considerations of sufficient weight to override the presumption in favour of a determination in accordance with the development plan. So very much on that basis, it is recommended that the application is refused, with the precise wording is provided on page 31, just at the bottom of that page at 5.1. But I think I'll probably leave it at that at the moment and quite happily answer members' questions.
Thank you, Robert. Members' questions for officers or for the officer? If there are no questions for Robert, Ivor?
Chair, clarity, because I'm not up to speed with who owns which companies, etc. New River REIT UK Limited is the applicant. Have they any connection to Next, or is the Next proposal standalone, whereby the fact that someone else could move in here and Next could leave tomorrow anyway?
Robert?
The member is correct in pointing out the identity of the applicant. New River REIT UK Limited is the applicant. Next have undertaken the sequential assessment in this case. So what they are saying is they have a set floor space need for a retail offer within this location, and that is what they are testing. That is what they have examined in relation to Dumfries. In terms of a planning permission, if members were minded to grant planning permission, in this case the planning permission is tied to the land, so it would not be restricted to a particular retailer.
Thanks, Robert. Jim McComan and Jane.
Thanks, Chair. Can you confirm that the existing retailers at CUCKOO Bridge are all primarily bulky goods retailers?
Robert?
It's not something that's been looked at as part of this planning application, so I'm unable to say with complete certainty. Chair.
Okay. Jim? Jane? No? Okay. David? Microphone, please.
Thank you, John. The sequential assessment looked at various town centre alternatives, and yet next want to build a sort of a big store which doesn't seem to conform to the requirements at CUCKOO Bridge, or the limitations at CUCKOO Bridge. But why didn't we look at Lockerbie Road, for example?
Robert?
Sorry, Chair, I'm just looking for clarification of the question. The question was, why did Next not look at Lockerbie Road in the sequential assessment?
Okay, so the sequential assessment, that's my ignorance, that's carried out by Next. Okay, so that's not a question for you then. But could you shed some light on the difference of the definition of the suitable outlets for Lockerbie Road compared with CUCKOO Bridge, please, then?
Robert?
Sorry, Chair, what I can advise is probably the best reference is on pages 12 and 13 of the case officer's report, and this is in the background section. So as part of the supporting information with the application, this is outlining the sequential test undertaken. So you're looking at paragraph 1.7d, so it appears on pages 12 and 13. So it says a sequential assessment of town centre and edge of centre locations has been undertaken, where the assessment has been based on three factors: suitability, availability and flexibility. So it says, based on the need for a new retail unit of circa 2,000 square metres, which is accepted, looking at the terms of the Tesco versus Dundee City Council case, that is accepted as the required level of floor space. The following site criteria has been identified, and you've got the range of that, and then they've looked at following sites which meet that criteria there. So basically, if it doesn't meet the criteria that's set out there, they don't need to include it in the sequential assessment.
Thanks, Robert. Tracy, can you help Dave? Tracy, can you help David with another card, please? Are there any other members with questions for the case officer? In that case, we'll come to the representatives. The first we have is Brian Muir and Ross Campbell on behalf of Lord Burnett SC Propco BV. Gentlemen, you will have a collective 3 minutes, and I will remind you with 30 seconds to go, just to draw your presentation to a conclusion.
Good morning, Chair and members. I'm Brian Muir and this is Ross Campbell. I'll briefly address the planning issues, and Ross will address you regarding the health of the town centre and the Lower Burn Centre. You have before you a clear recommendation from your officers. We support that recommendation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may wish to ask me on planning opinions and judgment from my perspective, but can I highlight just for the moment 2 points? The sequential approach has not been satisfied. And secondly, the retail impact assessment does not tell the whole story. The removal of a key anchor will do significant damage, more than the figures suggest. This is not just a diversion of trade, this is a diversion of confidence from the town centre. 2 other wee points. I know, because of my work, I'm very familiar with the Tesco versus Dundee City Council Supreme Court decision, which has been mentioned in the papers, and also with the Sheffield decision, which Next have referred to in their papers. I'm happy to answer any questions on that. As I am on retailing in Dumfries, I've advised in Dumfries for 25 years on many retail projects, so I know the feel of the situation. Ross.
We are major investors in Dumfries Town Centre. We have spent over £1 million in the last 2 to 3 years. We continue to invest despite an economic climate that means our asset has considerably less, it's now worth considerably less than we paid for it in 2014. Next have reported the trade in Dumfries Town Centre has declined, but they've reported this in a recent press release that this is a national trend, it's not just a Dumfries issue. As an experienced asset manager, we knew Next were undersized here, and we've been trying to help them ever since we acquired the centre. We have a complete audit trail that we've submitted to the council. Next have never directly engaged with us on trying to be upsized in the Lower Burn Centre. As you know from your officer's report, we at Lowerburn can offer them more space than they can get at CUCKOO Bridge. I refer to your paragraph 4.22 in your report. Next, I've made a clear argument that it's uneconomic to fit out the extra space at the Lowerburn Centre, claiming over £1 million. They've not factored in any landlord contribution that we would offer to help a deal. Next, mentioned issues in an open letter to the SNP of longer hours, car parking, lease lengths, occupational costs, more promotional issues. We have tried to engage with Next nationally and locally on these issues over the last few years. 2 examples. On longer low opening hours, we tried to increase Sunday trading. Next stopped doing this and have never engaged with us again.
You have 30 seconds left, Ross.
On lease length, they claim to have not to take 10-year leases, but last week it was announced in the press they've taken a new lease, a 10-year lease in Stirling City Centre. We are prepared to be flexible and offer them a 5-year lease. Retailing is difficult in Dumfries. Attracting new retailers has been very hard. New retailers will see an anchor tenant relocating out the town centre as a bad sign. If you go against the officer's recommendations this morning, we fear that other town centre anchors will follow M&S, New Look, New River, Boots, etc. We urge you to support the officer's recommendations and uphold your own local development planning policies.
Thank you, gentlemen. Questions for the objectors, and either Brian or Ross? I'm sure it'll save us doing the same exercise twice. Are there any questions for either of the objectors at the table today? In that case, thank you very much for your presentation, gentlemen. If you'd like to take your seats, thank you. I now have Michael Wright, who is an objector. And again, Michael, you will have 3 minutes, and I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go just to draw your presentation to a conclusion, whenever you're ready.
Good morning. My name is Michael Wright. I'm a director with Wirefox. I would like to thank Dumfries and Galloway Council for granting me the opportunity to speak today. I and my fellow retailers have grave concerns about the economic future of Dumfries Town Centre, and it's vital that these concerns are fully understood. Dumfries Town Centre's economic future hangs in the balance today, as it would suffer irreversible damage should consent for the planning application be given. Allowing such a change of use at CUCKOO Bridge would herald a mass exodus of large operators from the town centre, sounding the death knell for the local economy. We don't need to look too far for examples of how the vitality of a town centre can be devastated by a major anchor tenant moving. Kilmarnock and Greenock have both found how difficult it is to retain existing occupiers and find replacement retailers for vacant shops when anchor tenants leave. Wirefox has an extensive portfolio of property assets across Scotland, throughout the UK and Ireland. We made a significant investment of some £7 million when we purchased Sothergate Centre in June 2016, with a significant capex budget planned. As most of you know, this iconic Dumfries landmark is a 2.5-acre site which currently includes a parade of 14 national retailers, fronting High Street, future development lands off Shakespeare Street, and a public car park comprising 185 spaces. Wirefox is fully committed to strengthening the Dumfries town centre economy and working closely with national and local retailers. We identified huge potential in the town centre when we made the purchase and carried out significant due diligence, and had comfort that the retail was centred and protected in the town centre. We're in talks with a number of operators about a range of possible new leisure uses. We're also at a very advanced stage with talks with a well-known family restaurant chain to come to the town. The future economic prosperity of Dumfries Town Centre is threatened by this planning application and must be safeguarded by the council. This is much more about the 50 jobs that could be lost if Next closes Lowerburn Centre. It's about hundreds of further jobs that could be lost through the domino effect of more large operators taking advantage of the change in planning policy and following Next's lead. As you have seen elsewhere, once a catalyst is triggered, it can be impossible to recover. Approval of the planning application would force Wirefox to seriously reconsider its long-term investment plans for the town and the ability to secure further financial investment. A number of tenants have expressed their strong concerns about the issue, with many warning it would be highly unlikely they would renew leases should planning be renewed.
You have 30 seconds to go.
The current planning policy fosters and protects town centre retailing, clearly stating a town centre first objective. The town needs this protection more than ever. An abandonment of this policy would irreversibly damage Dumfries Town Centre. The future of the town centre is at stake and must be safeguarded, or it may never recover. Refusing this planning application was the right thing to do in 2006, and for the same reasons, it's the right thing to do today. CUCKOO Bridge is fully let. We do not envisage any issues in attracting further suitable occupiers, complying with the planning use class.
Thank you. Any questions for Michael? Jane?
Yes, I'm sort of intrigued really by the emphasis that is placed upon whether or not Next will actually stay or leave. I mean, Next have been completely, or the applicants have been completely clear they are going to leave. That's what they've said. I mean, they've said. So I am mystified as to why you are making emphasis upon Next as opposed to concentrating on the fact that CUCKOO Bridge is fully let. And that, to my mind, is the critical thing. CUCKOO Bridge is fully let. There is demand for that sort of area. So I'm just asking why. You've got to bear in mind, Jane, that Next is not the applicant. No.
Next, so we're dealing with an application from...
I accept that, but that's what the applicant, the objector is telling us we should take into account. So I wish to tease that out. These are experts. I'd like to tease it out.
Michael?
In response to that, ultimately, yes, it is New River REIT, who has put in the application. We know that it's Next who would be the beneficiary and would be the occupier of that unit. There was a similar application in Dumfries, which was refused for out of town, and Next took a further 10-year lease in the town centre. That was very recent. We have other occupiers, which include New Look, Bon Marché, River Island, etc. And we, as a landlord, cannot run the risk of them moving out of town, because all you will end up is considerable vacancy within the town centre that will be very difficult to fill again. We have an excellent town centre. We came over, we've invested in Dumfries. We invested in Dumfries on the basis that we knew there was bulky goods out of town and there was retailing in town. If that changes, it's going to have genuinely irreversible damage.
Thank you. Elaine?
Just for clarification, that your concern really is about the change of planning use at CUCKOO Bridge, which would not just enable that particular retailer to move out there, but in future other retailers would also maybe move out as units became available. There would be an effect of drawing other units out of the town centre. Can you clarify? That's actually the principal part of your concern, is that if this changes, then there will continue to be a knock-on effect.
Very much so. We engage closely with our tenants, and we have already been advised by particular tenants that this application is successful, that they would try to follow suit.
Currently, though, this is an application only for Unit 4. It's not an application to change the whole of the unit, the CUCKOO Bridge complex.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, my point is that if the restriction is lifted in one case, there is a concern it could be, then there is precedent for any other case that comes up thereafter.
Yes, but David reminds us that every case is judged on its own merit, so, but you're right. Okay, if there are no other questions for the objector, we'll move to the applicant. Thank you, sir. If you'd like to take a seat again, please.
Thank you.
We have Peter G. or Guy from, he's the applicant, and Peter, you will have 3 minutes, or a collective 3 minutes. Again, just when you're ready, folks, and you'll have 3 minutes between you, and I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Peter G, and I'm the Regional Estates Manager at Next for Scotland and Ireland. I have with me Evelyn, who is the store manager on the left, and Nick, who's the planning consultant, if there's any questions afterwards that I can't answer. So although we've traded from Dumfries Town Centre for over 30 years, unfortunately over the last 9 years there's been a continual decline in sales and support for the store. The store has lost nearly half its sales over this period, and the decline is continuing, with the store currently trading minus 18% down on last year. Regrettably, we have had to exercise our one-off break clause within our 20-year lease, and the store will close on the 14th of March next year. It has been suggested that Next could extend into the adjoining Poundland unit, and indeed the potential availability of this space seems to be the reason the planners are not supporting the application. But why would we take more space if we can't even make the existing work? The sales densities within the store are one of the lowest in Scotland, and therefore this store is not, as we call it, asking for any more space. It is simply not a commercial proposition, and the strict following of planning guidelines would, in this instance, unfortunately see Next leave Dumfries altogether. The face of retailing has changed considerably since Next first opened in the town centre over 30 years ago, and indeed Next itself has changed and grown, adding to its range not only fashion but a sizable and successful home offer, which now forms an integral part of our portfolio. I have with me a photograph of our new 80,000 square foot fashion home store we recently opened at Straighton Retail Park in Edinburgh to give an example of what we're now delivering and what customers are telling us that they now want. This is now our top performing store in Scotland. Our new retail park offer, in which we are prepared to invest over 1.7 million at CUCKOO Bridge, offers customers the space to browse in a naturally lit environment with plain art glazing with the convenience of plenty of free parking. This is particularly important for the collection of larger home items, for ease of access for mothers with pushchairs into the children's wear department, and for the collection of Next Directory online items. Customers are happy to shop longer hours on a retail park environment, and the stores regularly trade until 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. in the evening, with a coffee shop extending the dwell time. The new store will ensure jobs are retained for existing staff, and will see the number of jobs for local people increase from 36 to 55, and all existing staff will be given the opportunity to transfer. The trading area will increase from 7,800 square feet to 12,900 square feet, featuring a much larger home department and coffee shop.
You have 30 seconds to go, sir.
We've been very pleased with the level of support received to our Facebook page. To date, we have received 1,334 likes to our exciting new format for CUCKOO Bridge. If it helps councillors at all, although the gross area of the store will be 18,500 square feet, we are happy to cap the fashion element within the planning consent to a trading area of 9,965 square feet, thereby making it more of a bespoke unit for Next.
Can you draw a presentation to conclusion, please?
Yep, I'll therefore ask please for assistance in retaining Next within Dumfries, allowing us to invest in a new format store at CUCKOO Bridge when existing closes in March, thereby protecting and increasing local job opportunities. Many thanks for your time.
Thank you, Peter. Any questions? Ros, then Elaine. It's you first, Ros, yeah.
It's Katie, actually, not yours, but thank you. It's just a point of clarification I'm after. On the piece of paper we've been given, the Peter G is written down here as an applicant. However, he's introduced himself from Next, and we've been made clear that this is not an application from Next, but in terms of New River. So can I just ask for clarity what the role is of Mr. Peter G in this? Is he the applicant, or is he somebody speaking in support of the application, because it's written down here that he's the applicant, but he has introduced himself under the title of Next?
I think he's the preferred tenant, Katie, and apologies, I'm just trying to work from memory. Can you read that far? Peter, can you reply to the question, please?
Yes, the application has been made by New River, but on behalf of Next. I mean, Next will be the tenant, the unit, and the planning consent is being geared around us, and the amount of space that we're taking. As I say, we're prepared to cap the fashion floor space, so it is effectively tailor-made for Next. But yeah, the application is being made on behalf of Next. Yeah.
I think, Katie, Lucy's just reminded me third parties can't speak in support of the application anyway, so they could be described as a third party in this context.
It was just for clarification for ourselves, because that's being introduced as an applicant when he is not an applicant. I just wanted that point of clarity, but thank you.
Thank you. Elaine?
Just to ask the preferred tenant, in other areas you have specifically home and garden stores which have no fashion retail element, and I'm wondering why you hadn't looked at disaggregation and just had a home store up at CUCKOO Bridge, which would have been perfectly compatible with the rest of the bulky goods retailers up there. Why did you not consider that and possibly retaining your fashion retail in the town centre?
Peter?
We did have a period of acquiring standalone home stores only, and we got up to about 35 standalone home stores. Then moving on, we decided to combine fashion and home stores together, adding a coffee shop as well, and give the customer the sort of experience that they want. So for some years now, we haven't been acquiring standalone stores. The new format, and the only format we will do, is a combined fashion and home store. And Dumfries, with a population of only 38,000, it wouldn't be big enough to have its own standalone home store and a fashion store within the town centre as well. We need to get the sales we need out of a small town like Dumfries. We would need to have the combined fashion home and coffee shop offer. Otherwise, we simply wouldn't. Well, we wouldn't get the return on our investment to invest.
Thank you. Content, Elaine? I've got Ivor, and then I've got collection. Okay. Ivor.
Chair, the paper in here says that the current store's not sustainable, they're losing sales, things are going terribly wrong. My understanding, half of that's down to the fact that people buy on internet, and a lot of the people who shop in Next now might not pay over the counter but will go for an internet sale. How moving the store from one place to out of town, where you can't make money in the town, are you actually going to make more money out of town when people are still buying on internet, although they will browse through your store to see what you have, because that's what the sort of shopping trend is. Can you explain to me how actually moving out will save jobs, and what will the impact be on other retailers in the town centre if they don't have the likes of your store? Because my understanding is in Perth they lost a major retailer, and it was the economic impact on the rest of the shops in that area. I know it's not your problem, but it was something like a 40% drop from one company leaving. Now that's the impact. So if a 40% drop in jobs on the high street, that would be more than the creation of jobs at CUCKOO Bridge. If you could just explain how it's beneficial.
Well, what we want to bring here particularly is a much bigger home offer, and home really doesn't work in the town centre. We only ever did one standalone home store, that was in Tottenham Court Road in London, and it died, and we had to put it on the market within about a year. So all the home stores are out of town. People much prefer shopping home out of town. You know, they can pick up, if you're picking up mirrors or rugs or larger items, you want to be able to carry them straight to the car. You don't want to be struggling down a city centre, steps in a city centre car park. Our children's wear also trades a lot better out on the retail park. They like mothers particularly like the convenience of being able to drive right out in front of the store, take the buggy straight in. We have the children's wear on our ground floor, so they're on the level straight from the car into the children's wear department. There's also the benefits of the trading hours. I mean, unfortunately, Dumfries Town Centre is certainly dead at 5 o'clock. We try to extend the trading hours. Beyond that, it hasn't worked. The advantages we find in the retail park offer is that they trade much longer hours, so all of our retail park stores will certainly trade until 8 o'clock, and many of which, particularly at peak times, will trade up until 10 o'clock in the evening. So we're getting the advantage of much longer trading hours both during the week and at the weekends as well. I suspect, the retail park will continue to trade on the Sunday, where at the town centre there'll be negligible trade. And to give you an example, if you compare it to somewhere like Elgin, which is actually a smaller town than Dumfries, we moved out onto the retail park some years ago to the same size as we're talking about here, and that store takes exactly twice the amount of sales that we're now doing out of Dumfries Town Centre. So we're providing a store, a beautiful, naturally lit store, plain or glazed. We put roof lights in the stores to bring natural light in. We put a coffee shop as well. We're providing what the customers as well. We're providing what the customers want, and there's many examples across the country of how we know that's what customers want, and we know from our sales figures that is what is working.
Want to come back, Ivor?
Chair, one of the things that Next are putting here is the economic benefits of the extra jobs. Mr. G didn't answer what will the impact be on the high street of an anchor store moving out. And I gave the example of Perth, where they found that other shops had 40% drop in trade because there wasn't the anchor store in the town centre. Now, there's one moving out. What would that impact be on the economic benefit of the high street to Dumfries as is?
They might not be in a position to answer that unless we've done an assessment themselves, but Mr. G.
Well, I sort of look at it another way. By keeping next on the retail part, you are keeping the available spend within Dumfries. And if consent is refused today, we will have no store in Dumfries, and therefore you will lose a lot of custom to, or even more custom to Carlisle and Dumfries. To Carlisle and to Glasgow, which is what is happening now. Yes, I take your point that. A town centre would always be better with an anchor store, but unfortunately, we've been trying for the last 10 years. The locals, you can't blame us. We have the store here selling the same product as we sell in the rest of the UK. If we're not getting support from the locals, you can't really blame us for trying. And I would suggest that bringing the bigger, better store that people want will actually contain spend within Dumfries rather than lose it to the bigger centres around. And in that way, we'll be able to retain staff.
Thanks, David.
You've explained very well why you'd like a much bigger store and easy access, etc., and made it pretty clear that a downtown location wouldn't be suitable for you. And yet your sequential assessment has only considered small downtown locations, so naturally enough it found no alternative. You don't wish to apply with condition 9 at CUCKOO Bridge. Were there no other out-of-town locations that could have been studied where they don't have similar to condition 9?
Well, there was the alternative retail park which was mentioned earlier, which I think has got Matalan and TK Maxx on, but we just felt we have been, and I've been with my retail colleagues and we've investigated that part, but we just didn't feel that was a strong enough park. We like to be particularly near a strong food supermarket as well, and CUCKOO Bridge with the 24-hour Tesco. And the other, so as well for our home department, we do like to be situated next to complementary retailers, and CUCKOO Bridge does have that in terms of the complementary fashion retailers, but it is a much stronger part than the alternative retail park. So in short, we've investigated it, but no, the retailers didn't think they would create sufficient sales to make a store there viable.
Remember, we're dealing with the application in front of us, David. We're not trying to find new locations for next.
Yes, no, I was just commenting on the quality of the sequential assessment. I mean, CUCKOO Bridge doesn't have a lot of fashion outlets. I don't think it's got any. And Lockerbie Road, for example, does have a large supermarket and fashion outlets. I just want to say that for the record. Okay.
Thanks, David. Dougie?
Thank you, Chair. If I could bring it back to the recommendation that we have in front of you, and if I just briefly read this, it has not been satisfactorily demonstrated that a more sequentially preferable site in the town centre has been considered. We've already heard from the objectors that they spoke about a difficulty in engaging with Next. I wonder if you'd like to respond to that, Mr. G.
Sorry, is this in connection with the other town centre scheme or the Lorburn Centre?
It's in connection with Lorburn and the sequential studies that have been carried out, and what we've heard from the objectors, that they've had difficulty in engaging with Next in terms of other proposals that would keep Next in the town centre.
Yeah, the landlords of the Lorburn Centre have put to us what is currently trading as Poundland. Apparently they can get that back because Poundland aren't trading very well. Apparently there's a break clause in there. But and we have indeed run an appraisal on that space, and we've applied our criteria that we see across the country, which is a 50% return on incremental sales, and despite what was said earlier that we hadn't factored in a contribution, we had in fact into our appraisal applied a £588,000 contribution from the landlord. We've run that appraisal on the basis of, as I say, the return on sales. We require a payback of 24 months on all our investment, months, even 24.1 months won't be approved by our board. And this appraisal took 68 months to pay back, assuming that and on that basis that we paid no rent at all. I mean, it simply wouldn't pay back the shop fitting investment of just over £1 million to fit it out. I mean, as I come back to again, the short answer is, if it's not working now, why would we take more space in the town centre? You know, the store is closing in March, so why would we? Because we can't make it pay. So why would we double the size of it? I'm slightly lost as to the question, really. Sorry.
Thanks, Dougie. Jeff.
Great deal's been made about the accessibility of the CUCKOO Bridge site, but there is actually a car park underneath the Lawburn Centre. It's sometimes since I bought bulk goods from the Lawburn Centre, but when I did, I was able to buy the goods in the store and collect them from the loading bay below. Do you next offer that, and if not, why?
The delivery of goods we can cater to hold in the store. We are classed under light and large, and we don't actually have a lift that actually we have to send our staff down in that lift. We couldn't actually take a customer with, so we're not offering that. The customers that come in to get the parcels from the store, they can park in the Lawburn Centre, but it would actually be an exception if we actually allow them to come into the loading bay, because the actual centre doesn't allow the public to come into the loading bay. So we then have to gain permission from the centre to allow a customer to come into the loading bay for us then to take those products down. So we will absolutely, through good customer service, try and accommodate the customer in every way we possibly can. But it is not part of a service that Next provides, that you can come and collect your parcel from the loading bay.
Jeff, we're having a wee problem with the microphone. It's interfering with the transmission from next door.
Mr. D, if you could just, when you're answering the questions, just step back a bit from the mic. It's apparently interfering with the sound next door, I'm told.
Thank you, Jeff. You want to come back?
Yeah, I'm not suggesting the customer goes down in the lift. What you could do is order the goods in store, they're then taken down to the lift. You don't even need to take them out of your loading bay in the first place. Presumably you have stock in place, and the customer then drives to the loading bay and picks up the goods. They don't need to come down in the lift. Have you discussed this with the landlord? Is this impossible? Because it certainly happened in the past, as far as I'm concerned, unless the rules and regulations have changed fundamentally.
As I previously stated, that must have been like a one-off. This is not a regular occurrence where we have goods that are of a size that we would have to go to the loading bay with them. If you are buying something from Next that we don't actually stock, it comes into the store from the directory. It will go into our stock room, and we then have to get the personnel to actually take that to the loading bay. And even if, can I just say as well, if even a contractor's coming in to fix your electricity and everything, they're not allowed to park in the loading bay area for any length of time. So the loading bay the centre do not allow customers to frequently come in there. We have to get permission from them, so it's not something that is a regular occurrence.
Can I come back again?
Before you come back, Jeff, can I just remind members, we're not trying to reconfigure the Lawburn Centre. We have an application here for a change of use in Unit 4 in CUCKOO Bridge. But I come back, Jeff.
Well, I would like confirmation that this wouldn't be possible to fix the problems of the current situation. I can see Mr. Ireland behind there shaking his head.
Thank you. So mind we're no sorting of Lawburn Centre. I've got John Martin, Elaine, and then Katie.
No, it's just a contradiction there. Surely if you're buying bulky goods, if you buy it online, it gets delivered to your door. And as I say, I know for other things, as I say, we're talking about footfall in the store there. But I know we had a look in Carlisle at the home store down there. Come home, order it online, and then picked it up at the Dumfries store. It's not really footfall, and that money's not going into the store in Dumfries. There's quite a lot of contradictions being said here. As I say, I'm not getting into other sites or that, but when we mentioned Tesco score, at CUCKOO Bridge. Tesco's also got a store at the Peel. As I say, there's that many contradictions been coming in for Mr G that it's hard to understand where they're going at times.
Thanks, John. Elaine and then Katie.
Yes, it was just to touch on a point actually raised by Councillor Hislop and Councillor Martin in terms of internet sales. Can I ask what happens? I mean, as you can see, I actually purchase clothing items from Next, and I purchase them online and I have them delivered to the store. Now, does that count as part of your footfall or not? And if it doesn't count, it does count as part of the footfall, maybe people should be being encouraged to come into the store to pick up online goods.
Well, if you order from home on your PC, then that sale and collect from the store, then that sale is credited to Next directory. If you go into the store and order from Evelyn, then that sale is credited to the store. Yeah. But again, the larger collection stores are those on the retail parts where it's easier for people to drive in, free parking, pull up outside, quickly, pick up their, directory parcels and go. A city centre store, although there will be parcel collections, it's not so easy. You've got to, go into an underground car park, pay for your car parking, walk up and pick up your directory item.
Can we just try and refrain from having conversations out with the session, please? I've got Katie, and then hopefully we'll have brought the questions to a conclusion and we can get into session. Katie.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a point that's been touched by many of my colleagues here just now, and it was a simple question really. What percentage of bulky goods that are purchased from Next are actually taken away from a store nationwide versus delivered to a home? I.e., how many people go to these larger retail stores and actually buy the big bulky goods and take them away in their car versus ordering them and actually getting them delivered? I'm just thinking, you've given the example of parents with young children. Well, if you're a parent with a young child, you're not going to buy a big bulky good because you simply wouldn't be able to carry it anyway. You would go in maybe and perhaps order and get it delivered online. So it's just if you had a percentage or a figure that you could perhaps relate that question to.
Sorry, I was making the point with mothers with buggies more in connection with the children's wear department rather than the home department. In terms of the home department, Evelyn might be able to answer better than I. I mean, I don't have the percentages, but I mean, yes, you're absolutely right. Larger items, beds, wardrobes, etc. Almost certainly they will be delivered to your home. But there's as I say, there's the mirrors and the rugs and the pictures and the soft furnishings, the cushions and what have you. Which people will want to just pick up from the store and put straight into your car. So I'm afraid I don't have the percentages, but you're right in what you said. I don't know if you can add on that, Evelyn.
What tends to be happening in our store at the moment is because we can't give the customers the home offer that they're requiring. A lot of people, if they want to buy like a large sofa or whatever, they will tend to go to our Carlisle store. And we jokingly say to them, we'll go and look at it in Carlisle, but come back and order it in Dumfries to keep the money in Dumfries, because then in turn we find that if they've come to look at it in the store and they can't see what they're looking for, they will then go to Carlisle, which then obviously takes the money to Carlisle, because they will then stay in Carlisle and shop in the other stores, which is potentially taking the money from Dumfries anyway, because we can't offer the customers what they're telling us they want. And if we can, as I say, we do order things into the store for our customers to collect, and we make it, as viably possible as we can. We will assist them to their cars, etc., where we can. But it's actually when people are coming in to order these, they know they're going to be delivered to their home. But what we want is the people to order it in the store, and we don't have that offer to show them in the size of store we've got at the moment. So therefore, if we had a bigger store, we would get more orders in the store, which would prevent them going home, ordering it online to be delivered. So it would actually in turn help the store, because people are actually, that money is coming to the store. If somebody's buying a £1,000 sofa, it's going directly to their home, but that money is coming to the store, and they're not going to Carlisle, going to Next in Carlisle and then all the other stores down there. Instead, we're staying in Dumfries and benefiting the other retailers here as well.
That's Katie. Well, John?
quick one here. I'm getting all muddled up here. There would be no problem of them actually having a home store at CUCKOO Bridge. As I say, and that means, as I say, it's exactly the same at Carlisle. The clothing and the home store are two separate entities. There's nothing to stop them having the home store at Dumfries, so there would be no problem anyone picking up bulky goods if it was a home furnishing place instead of a combined store.
I think the applicant said it wasn't financially viable. I think he was asked that question earlier. So, Ian, we've just about exhausted this. Ian.
Thanks, Chair. The first time speaker, I wasn't going to say anything, but just it comes back to the 18% loss we talk about on an annual basis. Only one small thing outstanding for myself is that, and it's on the back of the conversation we've just had, if you took into consideration the amount of internet sales of people come and collect in the store, what additionality would that add? Would it then return that 18% negative into an actual surplus or a profit? I would imagine it may well. And that's I think that's got to be taken on board by your board that's making this decision. You're saying if it didn't stack up within a couple of years, I think from my own perspective, because that throughput's still there, it would return a profit rather than a loss if you included those figures potentially. I just wonder if we've got any chance of getting clarity on that, Chairman.
Mr. G.
So I'm not entirely sure I understand the question. You say if we remain in the Lowburn Centre.
Just so I'm absolutely clear, what you said earlier was that you make an 18% loss. You have done for a number of years. You've made a loss for a number of years. Therefore, that's your reason to move away from where you are, create a new store which will bring added benefit and profit to your business. What I'm saying is there's been a lot of discussion in regards to internet sales. Now, if what internet sales maybe get recorded elsewhere centrally, but they're actually being delivered through the Dumfries store, if that was taken into consideration, what would actually show on your books at that point? Would the balance, would you show a profit, would you still show a loss? I would imagine you'd start to show a profit at that point, and I think that's an important point for your board to pick up on, and actually for the committee here today.
I answered that question earlier and told you it was the direct that were allocated to answer the question.
Well, we wouldn't work on that. I mean, the company has a directory operation and it has a store portfolio operation. And if you buy it over Next Directory, then the sale is credited to Next Directory. If you buy from the store, the sale is credited to the store. That's the way we run all the stores nationally. So we wouldn't do something different for Dumfries if that's what you're suggesting. Sorry.
The way that you actually calculate it and the way it comes to your books, it could be looked upon in a different way, which actually would make it stack up and viable. I understand you've got a pro forma and you'll work to that. Just to try and get an idea, if it was the case, have you got the statistics? If that would it go by that 18% negative and actually bring the books into a balance? You maybe haven't got that figures at hand today.
We haven't got those figures, but why would we do that? Because if people are buying from the internet anyway, then we wouldn't. Why pay all the costs of the rent rates and service charge for a store if people are buying off the internet anyway? I don't quite follow the argument. Sorry.
Well, that's fine, yeah, I understand that. Thanks very much. A lot of times I sit in that car park in below waiting on my wife coming down because she's on the internet, but she still picks them up from Dumfries and then would shop other places. It comes back to those other arguments. We'll get into when we get to session. We'll probably get into that level of debate.
Right. I'm presuming there are no other questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Chief, and your team for your presentation. Members, we're now in session. Ian.
Well, listen to our arguments, Chair. I mean, I wouldn't be. I'm not a Dumfries member, but obviously it's for the whole committee to decide. I'd like to hear what other people think in regards to local members, but certainly I don't feel the case has been made to why we should make an exception today. Ivor brought up a very valid point in regards to, okay, and it wasn't really for the applicant to answer, but he was making a strong point. Okay, it's okay that Next they're running on their books at an 18% negative at the moment, so they're making a loss. But in real terms, an anchor tenant like that, from our perspective as a planning committee and a local authority, I think we have to look at, okay, what's the impact on the local economy in Dumfries High Street itself? And Ivor referred to different places across the region, Scotland, in regards to some places a 40% drop in that town centre turnover, the GDP within that area. I mean, I think we've got to stick, in this case, at this moment in time, we've got to stick to the recommendations from officers. I do think the case has been made.
So is that a motion from you?
Certainly, Chairman, I would make that a motion, but happy to hear other members.
Thanks for that, Jane.
I would say no.
Thank you. I think at this point that we should say that I think Next has been commendably open about their plans, commendably open. However, I don't see that we should be shifting from our current policy. We should continue, I think, to insist on the town centre being first for open Class 1 non-food retail use in accordance with current policy. I'm quite happy to second Councillor Carruthers' motion. Basically, we should give the town centre the best possible chance in accordance with policy, and we must give Next successors the best possible chance, and that is in continuing to go along with restricting the sale of, as is suggested in the condition here.
Thanks, Jane. John Martin nipped in before Ian seconded the motion. Are you content with that, John? Or?
That's fine.
Okay. Are there any other members? Is there any, or are there any alternative proposals? It's then the unanimous decision of this committee that we refuse the application set out in the report. Lucy, can you confirm the decision of the committee, please?
And I can confirm that the decision in relation to the application to develop land without compliance and with condition 9 attached to planning permission 00/P/3/0166 to allow non-food Class 1 retail use and ancillary Class 3 cafe at Unit 4, CUCKOO Retail Park, Glasgow Road, Dumfries, has been refused as per the recommendation in the report.
Thanks, Lucy. We'll have 2 minutes in case any members that are present want to leave. Okay, members, can we move on to agenda item number 5, an application for change of use and alterations to dwelling house to form 2 holiday flats with public bar and games room on the ground floor at MOUSWALD Caravan Park, MOUSWALD, Dumfries. It's full application, reference number 17/1202/full. The recommendation is to approve subject condition, and the case officer is Glendinning, but it looks like it's Pat Hanna today. So, Pat, if you just take us through your presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the case officer, Torrell, is on annual leave this week. MOUSWALD Caravan Park is a long-established caravan site predating 1998, and as you can see from the report, there have been a variety of planning applications at this site over recent years. The most recent one of which was in 2016, which you can see on page 37. And that particular application comprised 2 elements. One element was for the change of use and alterations to the dwelling house to form 2 holiday flats, which reflects the current application. The other element of that earlier application was to do with the occupancy of the caravans at the site, and that application was refused solely on the grounds to do with occupancy. And indeed, that application in 2016, the report committee at that time commented and noted that the change of use and alterations to the dwelling house were considered acceptable under the terms of the council's policies. I'll run through the slides quickly. MOUSWALD Caravan Park is sited to the southwest of MOUSWALD Place, which is the house within the caravan site, and the wider grouping of dwelling houses to the northwest. The A75 is the green road running across the top, and this site is approximately 1.3 kilometres north of MOUSWALD itself. The block plan shows the mansion house within the centre of the caravan site. And we've got a number of photographs showing the mansion house, and in the foreground here you can see the archaeological site within the centre of the caravan park, which is the remains of a medieval tower house. This is moving around and looking at the mansion house, and I should say it's an unlisted building. The only significant alteration that's being proposed is the garage that can be central within the image there is to be replaced with windows. Moving around and looking at some of the more general images of the site. The ground in front of the main entrance to the left-hand side of the screen is to be reprofiled slightly there to provide level access. This is the caravan park around the mansion house itself, and you can see on the right-hand side of the image that there's quite substantial tree belt that separates the caravan site from the houses to MOUSWALD Place. You can see from the proposed elevations that there's no changes to the front elevation there. No changes on these side elevations. On this elevation here, you can see the garage being changed, the garage door being removed and 2 new windows being installed. In terms of the floor plans, this is the ground floor plan showing in green the bar and games room, and in blue the lower flat, which is a 4-bedroom flat. On the first floor plan, this is, despite the colour differential, is proposed as a single flat, a 6-bedroom flat. The green shows the lounge and the kitchen associated with the flat itself. The use of the mansion house as holiday accommodation and entertainment facilities within the central part of a caravan park is acceptable in principle, and indeed it potentially enhances the tourism draw to the area. And the alterations that are proposed are very minor and are acceptable. Third-party representations have been submitted objecting to the proposal in terms of noise and residential amenity, both relating to the existing site and to the proposal. It's important as part of this application that we just consider this current application rather than any existing noise complaints. We are only looking at a proposal for change of use of a dwelling house to the holiday flats and the change of use to a bar within the existing caravan site. Such facilities are not uncommon in caravan parks, and given the separation distance between the building and the nearby residential properties, there's no reason why a well-run caravan park should create any noise or amenity issues. If there was any unreasonable use of the facilities, behavioural or antisocial noise, for example, then that would be a matter out with the control of planning and would really be a matter then for the police or environmental health. As part of the application, we have consulted with environmental health, and they don't consider that there's a risk of noise being unacceptable as part of the proposal. And therefore, it's recommended that the application be approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Pat. Any questions for the case officer? John, and then Ian.
Okay, Chair, thanks for that. I just wondered how the condition on page 42 would actually be monitored. How would you know that it was never used for full annual occupancy?
Okay, thank you, Chair. It is a fairly standard condition that we apply to holiday accommodation, such as chalets and so on, and caravans. And the way that is monitored is by requesting evidence of the occupant having a main residence elsewhere.
Happy with that, John?
Not really, Chair. So, if they had a relative living close by who could receive the mail from senders, then there'd be no way of knowing if this was occupied full time.
Right.
That could also be checked with the assessors.
Thanks, John. Ian?
I've got a question on the report, but I'll keep them to we're in session, Chair. It's more about the pictures themselves. I thought because there's been a number of concerns raised around about the roads, know that road network myself reasonably well. I think there possibly is issues there. I would like to see pictures of the actual road network, the access, so on and so forth. I know the roads officer hasn't actually objected to it in this case, but I think we need to see more detail around that. Have we got anything that we can actually look at today?
I think in the report it says that the roads is not an issue because it's a civil matter, but Pat?
We have no pictures of the roads to show you today. They were part of the application, the presentation for the previous application, where roads access to the site was an issue. But as the chair notes and as stated in the report, there's no the roads officer has no issue with standard vehicles accessing the proposed development, which is holiday flats and the bar and games room. Notwithstanding, it is understood that there's an ongoing civil matter in respect of the access to the site, and again, that is something that is separate to any planning process.
Thanks, Ian. Elaine?
Thank you. There's a number of objections, and on the first slide, on the map that's provided with the papers, we can see where North Lodge is. I just wondered if on the first slide you could maybe indicate to us where Yew Place, Mouswald Place and Mouswald Park are in relation to the site.
Pat?
I can only name the properties that are shown on the map there, I'm afraid. I'm not familiar enough with the locality to be able to name every house.
No, it's not the houses, it's actually the streets in Mouswald. Where's the village in relation to this application?
These properties that I'm pointing to now are the properties that are within the locality. There's dwelling houses along that road there. There's also dwelling houses there and there. That property, that is, I understand, is a shed or an outbuilding associated with one of the houses rather than being a
there is a little row of houses. The village is quite spread out, and there's a little row of houses. I just wondered where it was in relation to this. I don't know, that I can't actually see the village on the map. So
the village of Mouswald itself is about 1.3 kilometres south of here.
Are these properties in the village itself, like Yew Place and so on? Are they? I think they're actually in the village itself, are they not?
I couldn't answer.
They're random cottages. The village of Mouswald is 1.3 kilometres away from the application site.
Yeah, but Yew Place, I think, is actually in the village of Mouswald, is it not?
Do you want to help, Elaine? Are you content, Elaine? Have you had your answer?
Well, not really, but the objectors can probably explain that.
Great. Just if it helps, Mouswald itself is the village which is 1.3 kilometres to the southeast by road. This is the small building group of Mouswald Place. So what you see is the small building group is just that cluster that you're seeing on the slides.
Excuse me, could I get in and out? As I say, one of them properties is actually my cousin's, one of the houses, so as I say, I think I'd be better, she's not objected this time because I think she's on holiday, but I think I better, as we're bringing that out, I better come out of the meeting.
Okay, can you put John as a declaration of interest, please? Right, I've got Jeff and then Ian Carruthers.
No, mine's been answered, thanks.
Ian?
I think mine's as easy as well, but I think David's right and yourself right, the objectors will be able to answer the particular question that Elaine's got.
Thanks, Ian. Okay, have we no other questions for the case officer? In that case, we have a number of objectors listed, and could I just remind the objectors when they start speaking that there are certain items that we are not obliged to take into account, and there's some of them listed here: rubbish, dog fouling, drunken behaviour, water pressure, internet access. All of these things are no relevant planning matters, but you've listed enough planning matters, and if you could just deal specifically with them, we'd be very grateful. We have, first of all, Stephen Forsyth. Stephen, if you'd like to come forward, please. You've got 3 minutes, and I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go.
With their permission, I'm also speaking on behalf of 4 other objectors. I believe I'm entitled, therefore, to 15 minutes. However, I won't take up the full 15 minutes, I can assure you of that.
Are you doing it all in the one go? Because
Yes,
I've
I'm
got
doing,
that you have yours.
doing it all in the one go.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're
myself,
right. You've got
5,
15
yeah.
minutes. You've got to do it in all one. That'd be great. Thank you.
We're objecting on the following grounds. First of all, I'd like to point out the fact that there are a large number of people objecting to this proposal, both local residents and park residents. The current owner is already in breach of planning regulations at this site, and until these are fixed, then no further planning should be granted. Both the planning enforcement officer and the HO have been regular visitors to this site because of these issues. No planning permission exists at the moment for a large number of hot tubs and decking at this site. Even with retrospective planning application, a dangerous precedent could be set. You know, I'll just build a house in my garden, then I'll apply for planning permission for it. The owner is breaking rules at this site. Hot tubs and decking have caused serious issues with residents regarding fighting, drunkenness, semi-nakedness, noise, loud singing, shouting and littering. I have animals at the bottom of my garden and they have been throwing bottles and cans at them. The site is the only one in Scotland that allows and encourages large groups of young single males and females to celebrate stag parties, hen parties and significant birthdays.
Can I just remind you, Stephen, these are some of the things I asked you not to address because they're no relevant planning matters. If you'd stick to planning matters, please.
It is a planning issue because there's no planning in for these hot tubs. There should be planning application in for them. They're breaking planning conditions.
Today, there's no application for hot tubs. Today, there's no mention of dog fouling, noises, etc. Please just stick to the planning matters before us.
I would welcome the councillors to come and visit this property and to actually see what's going on. I've been a resident for 20 years and I've never had any problems until the current owner has taken over. We're absolutely fed up with what's going on at this site, and the managers of the site openly admit they can't control this. The owner wants nothing to do with his neighbours, refuses to put up any noise prevention barriers. His only concern is to make money. I'm fed up with picking bottles and cans up by drunk people sitting in their hot tubs from 7 o'clock in the morning until the early hours of next morning. Social media shows pictures of the fridges being full to brimming with beer, wine, spirits. And as one young lad has commented, I didn't think places like this existed anymore where large groups of young people could stay together and party. These 2 flats being proposed are not for mum and dad and the 2 kids. They are for large single-sex groups. The pub is solely being created specifically with these flats in mind, as unlike the lodges, there is no outside space for hot tubs for them to get drunk in. That's where the pub comes in. As an objector, Mrs. Gardner states, even now we are bothered with drunken behaviour, including riotous, noisy behaviour in the hot tubs, and on occasion a young man lying drunk in the driveway. This isn't Blackpool. This is rural MOUSWALD. It's the countryside. Application has a condition as well that neither of the dwellings shall be occupied as sole or main residence of the occupant, and they shall be used for holiday use only. The same condition that he is breaking at present. Planning Enforcement Officer has been involved in a situation where permanent residents have been living in holiday accommodation. It is difficult to prove and enforce, and as currently there is an ongoing breach of planning with workmen staying there from the hospital site. objectors also mentioned water pressure. Scottish Water have put in a 4-page document regarding this. I personally have had 2 boilers replaced because of the lack of water pressure. Roads is an issue, especially after the current situation with the Cullen bypass being shut. That track became a rat run, and it is in no fit state now for the number of cars, increased cars, that will be using this track. We look at potentially an extra 27 cars on this road on a daily basis. And without significant investment in the road structure, passing places, resurfacing, the single track road will not cope with its added number of cars. It is on all these grounds that we object to the proposal. At very least, this application should be suspended, giving town councillors the time required to personally visit the new Blackpool of South West Scotland. As councillors, I would just like you to imagine if this was happening adjacent to your property. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Can you just remain in your seat a minute in case some of the members have questions for you? Do any members of the committee have any questions for Stephen? In that case, thank you very much, sir. Thank you. We now have Alec McKechnie. Alec is going to address the committee for 3 minutes, and then he's going to read a prepared statement. And you'll appreciate you can't ask any questions in the statement, but you can on Alec's 3-minute presentation. Are you doing them one at a time, Alec, or are you joining?
I'm actually going to do Rebecca's first, just because obviously then if I
okay.
do mine second, if there's any questions, I can answer them.
3 minutes, and I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go, Alec.
Right. This is on behalf of Rebecca Mitchell, who lives in Greenacre, MOUSWALD Place, which is one of the properties adjoining the shared access road to the caravan park. I live next to the caravan park on the shared road. Since the owners have developed the park to lodges, I have noticed a massive increase in traffic to and from the park. This includes service trucks, taxis, small buses and cars, many not driven with any consideration at all. Vehicles are driving past my house at all times of day and night, some stopping at the end of my road driveway with lights on. It makes me wonder what's happening. I would be concerned if this application was passed, as it states 27 more parking spaces being required for the 2 flats and pub. As it's very densely occupied already and space is very tight, it's been pointed out by park residents in their objections that there is very little space between the residential lodges and the proposed changes to the house. If this is passed, will this mean I'll have cars parked along outside my house going to the pub if it was approved? I would also worry more about drunken people in the lane or wandering around, as this already occurs. The park is already too big for the area it occupies, and it should not be allowed to increase any more. I would ask the committee to refuse this application. Rebecca Mitchell.
Thank you. And now you'll start again 3 minutes, Alec, and I'll remind you with 30 seconds.
Can I just say, I appreciate what you said about some of the points that were raised that are no material planning concerns, but in my efforts to make the planning committee appreciate what we're actually having to put up with at the moment, I may refer to some of those things and I would ask that you cut us a bit of slack, because we're only trying to explain the situation as it is now and how it could be perceived to get worse with things that are going on. I appreciate that there are no material planning concerns, but the planning committee, the planners have put their report forward, and I understand is that the planning committee takes everything into view, all the aspects that affect the quality of life environment, people living there. So can you bear with me on some of the points?
You'll appreciate you've only got 3 minutes, and in that 3 minutes you can say what you like, but
thank you very much, Chair.
The members of the Planning Applications Committee are obliged to disregard anything that's not a planning consideration. I'm sure they're all aware of that, but you have your 3 minutes, Alex.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Chair. Right. As you're aware, there have been many objections to this application, all of which are from neighbouring properties bordering the caravan park and from caravan park residents themselves. This highlights the shared problems we all have to live with day to day at present, affecting the quality of life, environmental and infrastructure issues, noise, nuisance, rubbish thrown into our gardens, and general nuisance dog fouling, antisocial behaviour of people renting the lodges. The poor infrastructure to support the volume of people already on the site affects water pressure to homes, and the increased traffic on the single-track access road from all major roads in all directions causes numerous problems. The licence for this site was first granted in the 1980s when the average static caravan was 30 foot by 12 foot and slept up to 6 people. The units now on this site are 2 to 3 times larger than the size of these previous static caravans and sleep twice as many people. This has led to a high number of large units crammed onto a small site. Any further development of the site or house to increase occupancy further will only compound the issues raised in the objections. The application for the house has 6 bedrooms in one flat and 4 bedrooms in the other. This is likely to attract large groups of single people looking to party and no well-behaved holiday families. The extra amount of car parking spaces also points to this being the case. A pub on the site is also likely to add to the existing antisocial, drunken, noisy behaviour currently displayed around the park, and most notably in and around the hot tubs and raised terraces, which incidentally do not have any planning permission and are under an enforcement order to apply for planning consent at the moment. This site has grown from a small holiday park to the equivalent of a small town in what was a quiet rural hamlet of 8 houses. I have lived next to the park for 20 years and have only had cause to complain since the current owners took over. This is not a well-run park anymore. Many current planning conditions have been ignored and required council planning enforcement and environmental officers to be involved, so I doubt any conditions placed on any future developments would be adhered to. So I would ask the committee to refuse this application, or at the very least postpone a decision until a site visit has taken place. This has been requested by a number of objectors on several previous planning applications, but has not taken place. I would also be delighted to show any committee members onto my property to view the development from my perspective. I realise the issues raised are not material planning concerns, as these have been covered by the planner, but do appreciate the role of the planning committee to review all the impacts on the existing community by future potential developments, and I would hope that our concerns were fairly considered by the committee. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Alec. Can you wait just in case any members have any questions for you? Any members, any questions for Alec? Ian?
Just a quick one in regards to the leaders, the council's question earlier. Yew Tree Place, I think in particular. Any chance you could maybe identify where Yew Tree Place is for the sake of the members?
Yew Tree Place, as you're coming down the road, the left-hand side of the caravan park is Yew Tree Place, which is the residential, which is to the left of the mansion house. To the right of the mansion house, as you come down the road, is the holiday side of the park. The residential part of the park, the rules concerning being able to buy a property there is you have to be over 50 and you can't have any kids living there. And yet the holiday side of the park is allegedly aimed at the younger holiday market and young people. So there's a clash of use there coming onto the site straight away. And it looks quite expansive there, but it isn't. It's under 3 acres and it's crammed. And the properties, MOUSWALD Place existing, which we own, which coming down the road are to the right. That map's miles out of date. The boundaries that are shown along there, and that's actually my shed, which was pointed out. The boundaries that are shown along there for North Lodge, that's not the boundary. Every boundary is right onto the caravan park. Bottom of my garden fence is situated, one side's mine, one side's the caravan park.
Thanks, Ian. Jane?
Notwithstanding the remarks made earlier about water pressure not being a planning matter, can we possibly have some indication of what you're saying about the problems with water pressure, please?
Yes, at peak times, there is no water pressure. The point Stephen was making is that low water pressure has led to a failure of 2 appliances, 2 boilers in this house, which he's had to replace. But at peak times, like in the morning, there's no pressure for showers. Water pressure drops off, and Scottish Water have been involved in trying to rectify the situation. They've apparently been working with the caravan park, but the infrastructure that's available at the moment, both with water and roads, isn't suitable to support what's there at the moment, never mind any increase. Any increase, as I've said, would I can only say probably because I'm not an expert on these matters, but the likelihood is it would just compound the issues that we have and make them worse.
Thanks, Jane. Any other members? In that case, Alec, if you return to your seat, thank you very much. I now have the applicant, Mr. Graham Hale, and again, Mr. Hale, you'll be allowed 3 minutes, and at the 30 seconds to go, I'll remind you and ask you to bring your presentation to a conclusion.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to address you and the members of the Planning Applications Committee. MOUSWALD Lodge Park has been a long-standing caravan site. There are 2 existing holiday cottages to the side of the main house for reference. This application involves a minor planning application for the change of use and alterations of the main house at MOUSWALD Lodge Park, all within the existing footprint. The previous permission granted in 2012 for the change of use of the house to form 6 residential flats set a planning precedent in terms of recognising that an increase in accommodation would not cause significant adverse harm to local amenities, nor harm in terms of planning policy principle. More recently, the Planning Officer's Committee Report for Planning Application 16-1799/FUR recognised that the formation of 2 holiday flats and the reinstatement of the bar and games room was considered acceptable. In responding to relevant objections from occupiers of nearby properties, the proposal would not have any significant adverse effect on general amenities due to the building's central location within the park and its distance from adjoining residential properties, that is, the houses themselves. Most of the physical changes to the building would be internal. Any external alterations are limited to minor matters only. Consequently, the use would not lead to any material adverse effects in terms of overlooking, loss of light, noise and disturbance, emissions, etc. Objections relating to water pressure, use of hot tubs, decking on some of the caravans are not relevant to this application. Whilst there might be a slight intensification of use over the existing single residential use, this has to be considered against the existing long-standing tourist recreational activities within the site. Any increase in use would therefore be very modest only. The use would not generate significant additional travel by car. Proposed change of use would not require any alterations to the existing site access, and there is plenty of space for visitors' cars. No objection has been raised by the Council's Road Department. The proposed development would satisfy the criteria to key local plan policies ED2 and ED10, would provide additional tourist accommodation, enhance facilities, generate further direct employment on site, enable greater economic spend in the area, and form an integral part of the existing well-established tourist facility. I also add the owners of MOUSWALD Lodge Park have introduced significant improvements since they purchased the site in 2007, with a significant level of physical and financial investment going into the park to create a very high quality visitor attraction.
You have 30 seconds to go, sir.
This minor change of use would be part of that investment strategy. In conclusion, the principle of development has been accepted by the virtue of previous planning reports and decisions. Planning law requires that applications must be determined on the individual planning merits. Proposed change of use would be acceptable when considered against key local plan policies. It would not have any significant adverse effect on nearby residential amenities.
Can you bring your presentation to conclusion, please?
The Planning Officer's report is clear that the proposal is acceptable. We would welcome your support for this application. Chairman, I thank you for your time. I'll take any further questions if necessary.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Hale, Elaine?
This is a total of 10 bedrooms in the 2 flats. Can you advise us what sort of capacity those rooms might have? Is this another 20 individuals visiting the site?
No, I think it would be on the basis that you'd get a family attending the site, visiting the site. It would give that flexibility. I didn't really recognise the concept that it would be used for single males arriving in mass. I don't think that's the case. Certainly when I've been on site, it's a very quiet site. I've been on the site in mid-June, and it was very quiet at that time. There are residential chalets on site, and those are permitted uses.
Thanks, Elaine. David McKay.
Thanks, Chair. When I first read this, sir, I wondered how you're going to justify a 12-person unit and an 8-person unit. Are you going to put conditions on the accommodation such that it will only be used by related individuals? As the gentlemen that were speaking earlier on, the objectors, they were on about, well, you've got 8 and 12 self-catering, 8 and 12-person units. So that's 20, you could have 20 individuals actually staying in there, albeit they're associated through friendship, maybe. Do you see that as an issue, or do you see a condition being applied such that it would be related members only would use these flats at any one time?
I think you have to bear in mind that this is a very large house that is very difficult to put to a single use. And so what the owners are trying to do is to make some beneficial use out of the building. Now, it already has had planning permission for 6 units in the past, so that has set a precedent. In this case, they're trying to restrict it to a 2 flats only at this point in time. If if there was a greater number of parties that arrived, obviously that would be through the booking system. But I didn't envisage it would be necessarily used for that kind of purpose. In addition to which, it has to be borne in mind that the caravan site license, at the moment, the occupiers are running it at a lower capacity than the actual site license permits. So, in terms of activity, I can't imagine that there would be a significant increase in use of the building to that extent that it would actually cause significant harm to their next door neighbours. I think that's the relevant issue, because at the end of the day, you've already got an established caravan site where people will use the site for recreational purposes. People who use the caravans will be out enjoying it. The surrounding grounds, it's fabulous grounds with, you've got grounds there for people to have to play a bit of football or whatever, and you can't control that. That's not a material planning consideration. So at the end of the day, my view is that the house itself is significantly set away from those houses. It shouldn't cause significant harm at all.
I think as well, we can't place some conditions like that, Joe, because we wouldn't possibly be able to manage or control them. And as described as change of use and alterations to form holiday flats.
I think possibly where I'm coming from, Chair, is when I've seen the self-catering flats for 8-person and 12-person units, that's not the usual size of flats that you have as the holiday flats. But that's fine. I've had an answer to it. That's fine. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other members got any questions? John?
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering if the manor house is occupied at the moment, and if so, by how many people? Because if it's not occupied, you have an extra possibility of 20 people using access roads, facilities, water, etc. Is it occupied at the moment, and if so, by how many people?
The answer is no, it's not occupied at the moment, no.
Thanks, John. Ian Blake.
Thank you, Chairman. You mentioned during your presentation that you didn't envisage this being used for parties, for single-sex parties, etc. Yet you've heard a number of the objectors have actually raised that as an issue just now, albeit it's not relevant to this particular planning application. But would you like to make some comment on that? How it's not your perception that will happen, yet the objectors feel that it is happening?
Well, I think you've got to bear in mind this is a very large house, and any activities are likely to be within the house itself. I mean, the likelihood of noise and disturbance extending to the next door properties, adjoining residential properties, is very limited indeed. I cannot envisage that that noise is going to extend out to that degree. Yes, there is likely to be a slight increase in activity, but at the end of the day, we have to be pragmatic. We're trying to put some beneficial use to that house. It could, for example, an alternative would be a hotel. And that would be a legitimate use, objective to change that to a hotel, for example. But that's not the case here. It is a very minor application. It's trying to get some degree of usage out of the building, and it is part of the existing authorised. It would be used as part of the existing authorised tourism activities within the site. As I said before, the existing site licence allows for a far greater number of caravans than currently exist. So at the moment, it's fairly self-contained. And when I've been on site, certainly, I don't get the impression at all that this kind of use is going to cause any significant harm at all.
Thanks, Ian. Jeff?
Mr. Hale made reference to the a previous application which was granted unconditionally to form 6 residential flats. Why wasn't that followed up on?
I can't answer that question. I don't know the answer, simply. I don't think that is relevant. I mean, the question, the application is specific to the holiday flats. And I'm sorry, I just can't answer that why it wasn't taken up.
And we are dealing with application before there's no previous ones. Any other questions for the applicant? In that case, we'd like to take your seat again, sir. Thank you very much. We're now in session. Members? Ian?
Thanks, Chairman. We've had a lot of concerns raised, and we've tried to have comments in regards to that, but I think because of the concerns raised over Scottish Water, over the roads constraints, I would say the amenity, rather than going about antisocial behaviour, so on and so forth, the throwing a little bit, it certainly affects the local amenity of the local houses. There's people right inside YouTube places right next to this. It sits within 20 or 30 yards of this actual site application. I think we absolutely have to have a site visit. It's too many things here of concern being raised by the locals that say, listen, it's not just a perceived feeling for them. It's absolutely clear that it is a concern to them, and I think it's as much about the way. I don't think they're anti-development. I think that they're more about this has to be brought into order before we actually determine this. And in order for this committee to actually fully understand their concerns, we have to have a site visit, Chairman. I would propose that we have that, please.
You have to tell us on what basis, because it's quite clear in your papers that water pressure is not an issue, the roads is not an issue, or there's no planning consideration. Now, I'm no against a site visit, that's what members want, but you have to be clear why you want it.
I think, I thought I'd done that because there is perceived roads constraints. I've been on that site numerous times, just driving by and so on and so forth. They're absolutely, my perception would be that there is road constraints. Don't understand the increased volume of traffic. One saying yes, one saying no. I need to understand what a roads officer's justification is. Gets a roads officer on site, we've done that many times. Scottish Water, in fact, absolutely everybody, spoke to everybody in that area who was actually in at the time of the campaign previously. Everybody in that area is complaining about poor water pressure. Scottish Water haven't objected. They object to Gretna, the whole of Gretna, you can't get a development there yet because there's poor pressure, yet in this area it's absolutely fine. There's so many things that actually need to be ironed out here. So I think it's quite clear why I'm asking for it. There's roads issues, there's Scottish Water issues in particular, but I could go on, Chairman. So with a lack of, as I said at the beginning, is there any pictures in regards to the roads, the entrance, the access, taking away that there is a private maybe thing going on at the moment in regards to the access from the public road onto the private road, that's separate, but we haven't actually seen the concerns that are being raised, so we need to see that, Chairman. I would move that we do. So I'm quite clear on why I would like a site visit. I would move that we do have a site visit.
Council Roads Officers, no objections, but anyway, Elaine?
I tend to agree with Councillor Carruthers on this one, actually, that we're hearing that, in fact, the objector said that Scottish Water was addressing a problem with water pressure on the site, so I'm a bit puzzled as to why they haven't actually raised any objection if they are investigating problems with water pressure in the area. I also have difficulty in, I know Mouswald quite well, but I can't quite get round where this, where everywhere is in relation to it. For example, I mean, we didn't seem to know where U Place, where a number of the objectives lived, was in relation to the site itself and whether or not there's noise. There's a lot of conflict between what we're hearing from both sides. So I personally would like to go and have a look and maybe speak to people about the water pressure issues. I think maybe we could actually chase that up with Scottish Water as to whether they have actually been investigating water pressure issues out there.
I'll ask David just to come in at this point.
I mean, just to be clear, we've got to focus on the actual application that's before you. So things such as the water pressure, that we've got no objection from the statutory consultee about this. All you're looking at is the building that is an authorised dwelling house being made to 2 flats with a public bar. So is that going to have a material impact on the roads or water and residential amenity? Obviously, as officers, we think not. If members feel that it's important to have a site visit to address either the relationship between the buildings or, I mean, as I say, I don't think the roads network is an issue with this case. But you're not going to be able to address things on a site visit related to water. We've consulted with the statutory consultee, they've come back with no objection. I don't think we can reasonably pursue that issue much further.
Elaine?
Are we not able to ask Scottish Water, however, whether or not they are investigating problems with water pressure in the area?
David?
Well, again, that comes back down to a bigger issue that's not related to this direct application, given that this is an existing building which can be legitimately used as a large dwelling house. So would the change make a material difference to it? And Scottish Water have been consulted on that and said that they have no objection about it. There is a bigger issue about the water pressure in the area, but that is something which really the people in that area need to take up directly with Scottish Water because they are the water provider.
Jane?
I think you've asked whether or not we're going to have a site visit. I have to say I don't think a site visit, I mean, I'm very sympathetic to what everybody's trying to do, but I don't think a site visit is the right way forward. I think if you're going to be brave about this, you have to refuse it on the basis that you're not satisfied that there is sufficient water pressure and there have been sufficient issues of doubt raised in one's mind that there could then be a land use conflict. I would suggest that we don't go on a site visit and that maybe people might like to think about whether they want to refuse it or whether it would be reasonable to refuse it. But I don't think a site visit per se is going to help us, so I propose we don't go on a site visit.
So far we've got Ian Carruthers suggesting a site visit and Elaine was sympathetic to it. Have you supported the proposal? So yes, it's a proposal for that. Jane has a proposal that we do not. Patsy?
Well, I'm just in support of having a site visit. I don't normally support site visits because I normally think we've got enough in the papers, but I think, we've got problems here with breaches of planning regulations, hot tubs and deckings. I think the residential amenities. I think, funnily enough, as a planning committee, I think we ought to go and have a look. I think it's our duty. Whether we might not be allowed to bring it into the actual decisions for this thing, but I think we need to get a feeling for what this development is all about. And I think we can only do that with a site visit. So I would be happy to go on a site visit.
Which is fine. So currently we have a proposal for a site visit and a seconder. Is there a supporter for us determining the application today on the basis of enough information before us? Jim?
Thanks, Chair. I feel we have heard sufficient evidence or certainly sufficient allegations to suggest there are potential land use conflicts here. And I would certainly favour a site visit to assess the application.
I'm only asking if Jane's got a seconder. If no, then it's quite simple. We're going to have a site visit. I don't need anybody else to say they want to go. I need somebody else to say they're not going to go. Dougie?
To possibly have some clarification from Councillor Maitland, are you proposing that we reject this application?
No, she can't do that. She can only propose that we don't visit because we've got enough information before us. And at that stage, she may or may not put forward another proposal. But no, it's only, are we going or are we not? If nobody's going to second Jane, then we're going.
Let's go.
Fine. So you want your dissent recorded,
I want
Jane?
to. I want to.
Then we have agreed as a committee that there will be a site visit, date and time to be arranged. Thank you. Lucy, can you confirm the decision of the committee, please?
And in relation to item 5, change of use and alterations to dwelling house to form 2 holiday flats with public bar and games room on the ground floor at MOUSWALD Caravan Park, MOUSWALD Dumfries. The committee agreed to go on a site visit, and I have recorded Councillor Maitland's dissent.
Thank you. We will now have a 30-minute recess. That will give the next folk time to come in and the current people time to leave. Lunch is served, but it's in the small room to the right because all other rooms are occupied today. Joe. Hi. Come to agenda item number 6. Erection of 2 single-storey dwelling houses and formation of accesses at land adjacent to TEAGHLACH, EASTRIGGS, ANNAN. Full application reference 17/0827/full. Recommendations approved subject to conditions. And again, it should be Torrell, but it's Pat again. So Pat, if you'd take us through your presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just go straight to the photograph, the presentation. This is the application site in red, up at the top left-hand side of the screen. There's an existing stable building on the site at present. The site is shown again in red here down at the bottom of the screen, and the black line shows the settlement boundary so that you can see that most of the application site is within the settlement boundary, but a small part of the site does fall out with the settlement boundary. That relates to garden ground for one of the proposed dwelling houses. Turning to the photographs, this is the application site standing up in the northern part of the site and looking southeast. This is looking back towards EASTRIGGS and looking towards the properties on the ridge. Looking south, and you can see the stable building hidden behind the bushes there. And turning around and looking at the existing dwelling at TEAGHLACH. This is the existing stable. The stable faces into the site, with the road being on the far side of the stable there. And these are just shots across the site. This is the private road that runs alongside the application site, and access will be taken from this private road to the application site on the left there. The road leads down to the Ministry of Defence site. This is the site layout showing the 2 dwelling houses access from the private road with field access separating the existing dwelling at TEAGHLACH and the 2 proposed dwellings. And the next few images are all of the dwelling houses that are proposed, showing the design and layout to be modest and broadly in keeping with the existing layout. As I noted earlier, the application site does fall within the settlement boundary of EASTRIGGS, and therefore the principle of development is broadly acceptable. And similarly, the design of the dwelling houses are modest and not out of keeping with the existing locality. Representations have been submitted to this application, and they're primarily related to 2 key issues. Firstly, the road network serving the site, and secondly, flooding. The existing road is a private road, and therefore there isn't a requirement for it to be brought up to adoptable standards with footpaths and street lighting and so on, although you'll note that there is some existing street lighting along there. In terms of the proposal itself, access, parking, visibility and so on is considered to be acceptable by the roads officer, who raises no objection to the proposal. In terms of flooding, one of the objectors will show some slides about that later. But the site isn't identified as being at risk of flooding, whether that be fluvial or pluvial. But it is understood that the road has flooded previously during what the flood prevention team call an exceptional rainfall event. And it's understood that that relates to Scottish water infrastructure that needs to be upgraded. Notwithstanding that issue, this proposal will require to be designed so that it has a neutral impact on the water environment, and that will be something that will be assessed in detail at the building warrant stage, but there's no reason why a new house cannot be designed to be neutral in terms of the water environment. Finally, the flood risk management team have no objections to the proposal either, and they have seen the images that have been forwarded by the objectors. So, for the reasons set out in the report, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Pat. Any questions for the case officer? Councillor McKee? Have we a hearing loop? Have you tried to access the hearing loop? Oh, okay. We'll try and speak up for you. Right, Councillor McKee, members, try and speak up, please.
Could you show us the identifiable boundary of this site, please?
The site is as shown in red on that slide there, and that then sits on the location plan down at the bottom there. You can see that the triangular element on the eastern side of the site extends beyond the settlement boundary, which has a little inset.
Right. You know, in the past, if we haven't got identifiable boundaries, the next thing you know is we're in for more houses to extend that area. And have you anything there that shows an identifiable boundary? In other words, something that can't be overcome?
Pat, I presume the remainder of that site that you have would be out with the settlement boundary, so that in itself would be an identifiable or a defensible boundary for further applications. But you can answer Councillor McKee.
Okay, thanks, Chair. You're correct, yes. The settlement boundary is along the southern part of the application site. And so whilst there is no defensible boundary in terms of landscaping or topography at all, the policy context will be different for any proposals south of the settlement boundary, and any development beyond the settlement boundary would be assessed against policy H3 housing in the countryside or H4 housing out with settlement boundaries. But this application is within the settlement boundary itself.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Joe. Any other Jim McComb, speak up, please.
Thank you, Chair. Presumably, the fact that the proposed site is within the boundary is why it is not classified as ribbon development.
Pat.
That's correct.
Thank you, Jim. Any other members? Elaine?
Just for a point of clarification on the slide that's up there, the narrative says that it's only part of the garden which extends beyond the settlement boundary. But I'm assuming that those rectangular parts within the plan are the proposed developments. It would look as if one of the properties is considerably out with the boundary.
Pat?
Unfortunately, it's not the best plan that's on the screen there. That is taken from our GIS planning constraints map, and it shows a number of other planning constraints on there, including planning history, which is previous planning proposals, for example, for the stable itself. So I would advise that really the key thing to look at in this image is the settlement boundary. I'll show this. And the application site itself, as shown in red.
And that rectangle, which is protruding out with the settlement boundary, does not relate to the positions of one of these properties then?
Is that one there that you're referring to? Or
No, the one that's actually within?
in here?
No, the other one that's sticking out? That one?
That one doesn't relate to anything on the ground at all.
Thanks, Elaine. Any other members for the planning officer? David?
Do we know why there's that sort of strange shape to the settlement boundary there, with the kink where it bites into the proposed site?
Pat or David?
I couldn't answer that with any certainty. That would have that'd be something that would have been looked at when the local development plan was being considered and drawn up. But usually the settlement boundary will follow the most identifiable route around a particular field. But it's not particularly clear to me in this instance why it's taken that route.
David,
David wants to.
I think really just to say that obviously there is a sort of dogleg down from the houses along the ridge, where there have been a number of houses historically heading down the road to the MOD. But that area where there was the stables was obviously included, but I have to be honest and say I don't think there's a particular logical boundary why it jinks in the way it does. And you can actually see there's a field boundary that runs along there. It would have made a perfectly sensible alternative settlement boundary, which is why, as I say, although technically it's out with the settlement boundary, we didn't, as officers, feel that there was any concern for that to be included as part of garden ground for plot 2.
Thanks, David. If there are no other questions for the case officer, we'll go to the first of the objectors. Again, each objector will be given 3 minutes, and I'll remind each objector with 30 seconds to go, just to bring their representation to a conclusion. I'll first of all got Alan Johnston. Alan, whenever you're ready, and I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go.
Right. Right. Yeah, I'm a resident on the road leading down past the plots. I've been there for 21 years, and over this period of time, we've always believed that the land relating to the proposed site was greenfield. It's always been classed as agricultural land, although it's got a stable built on it. There's no water on the site. There's no gas, there's no electricity on the site. There is a water standpipe on the site, which has been taken from a water trough 2 fields away that was installed by a chap who had a static caravan there a number of years ago, and he applied for planning permission for that site, and it was refused on a number of grounds. That's why he ended up selling the property, and it's been sold twice, I think twice over since those days. So we can't understand why this land is now classed as a brownfield site, and this planning permission could be allowed to go ahead with it. When we know that the stable is not a dwelling, it is a stable, and the hay loft, the hay barn that was supposed to be built has never ever been completed. It's just all derelict. The flooding on the road that we keep referring to, it happens on a regular basis. It doesn't happen on a one-off or one every 10 years. Every time we get a heavy shower of rain, the road floods. The problem we've got as well, because we have surface water and sewerage water going down the same pipes, every time we get a high downfall of rain, the sewerage blocks up and it backfills. It backfills onto the land adjacent to the proposed site, backs on over the road, backs onto the lady sitting behind me's land, Mrs. Lupton's land. Now the water board or your flood risk assessment management team have said that there's no chance of any flooding down there. The lady that's going to speak after me, she will show you documentation from Scottish Water that there is a problem there. The sewerage cannot cope with the water that's going through the system. It's overflowing and running into a beck called the SOAKAWAYS beck, which then leads down into the sea. And like I say, there is no water on the site. We know that there's 4 dwellings before you get to this to the proposed site, and we've all got a stop taps at the top of the road. So if there's water going to be brought down to the site, it means the whole road's going to have to be dug up again to put 2 more pipes in to the proposed sites.
You have 30 seconds to go.
Right. And as far as the sewerage is concerned, we think there's a major problem with the pumping system there is in Eastriggs, and it's always been renowned for having problems. And man, that's just two of the objections that I've raised today. I raised 8 in total regarding lighting, pavements, drainage, just everything. There's no drainage on the land leading down past the site whatsoever. But our main concerns are the sewerage, the flooding, and of course the greenfield site.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any members have any questions for Mr. Johnson? In that case, if you'd like to take your seat again, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next objector is Joanne Lupton. Joanne, would you like to come forward, please? We'll have you the same in 3 minutes time for your presentation. I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go just to bring it to a conclusion.
Okay. Regarding to the objection that we made, we want to highlight the point that, yes, even though Scottish Water has said they have no objection stating that the current capacity in Eastridge wastewater treatment to serve this development, but the sewage pipe in this area cannot cope with the current demand to take away the sewage water and the drainage water to this water treatment works. The combined sewage outfall opposite our house frequent overflow, and it's been increasingly overflowing for the last few years. As you can see, I've been some slides up, dated back in 2013 when we have lots of problems. It's not very clear on there, but you can see it have been overflowing at the side there. And then the next couple of years, again, and in early December 2015 was quite a bad episode. As you can see, the next slide will show it's backtracking to our property. This is for the drain in our property. We have to have standard water. This is 24 hours before this actually finally got drained away. Scottish Water is fully aware of this issue. We've phone called a number of times during this period. Then again, at the end of December, the next slide, that's one of the drainage on that weekend. And then the following one, which is like late December, as you can see, clearly is overflowing again. Then it happened a few times. Then again, it happened. Oh, that's actually meant to be 2017, that one, not 2015. That's happened this year. And also the letter confirming from Scottish Water that they have acknowledged the fact that we do experience flooding from their sewage network, which is situated opposite our property. We feel when this does happen, obviously the area around it does get saturated with water and does start to get over flooded areas. This is due to the fact is that when it overflows, this combined sewage outfall, it goes into SOAKAWAYS, which have a knock-on effect for the surface water not be able to drain away. This problem is not a new one. It's been having an issue for a long number of years. Since my family have been living in this property, they have complained a number of times to Scottish Water to try and get this problem solved. We feel like this problem needs to be solved as soon as possible, rather before any further development into the village.
You have 30 seconds to go.
Okay. The current sewage system for Eastridge and Dornoch is out of date and is not fit for the current demands. So we would like this sorted out. We feel this is an issue.
Thank you. Can you just remain in case any members have any questions for you? Does any member have any questions for Joanne? David McKee?
Sorry, I didn't hear whether he said what's on that letter. Has any of that been done?
Nothing has been done. We have been fighting for the last year regarding about this issue. We have spoken to many people and no one is getting back to us.
Thank you.
This letter is now a year old.
Thank you. Any other questions for this lady? In that case, would you like to resume your seat, please? Thank you. The next objector is Sean McConway. Sean, you'll have 3 minutes, and I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go, just to draw your presentation to a conclusion.
Well, a lot of what I'm going to say is going to be connected with water and sewerage problems as well. I just briefly want to start by saying, as has been mentioned, the false address that was used on this initial application, which certainly caused a lot of 12 The Ridge, which certainly caused a lot of anxiety to the people who live at 12 The Ridge. I mean, imagine anybody here, you suddenly see an application with your property address on. I know that was then changed to be the correct one here, but you know, I just want to say something on that. With regard to any possible flooding issues, and I don't think it can be stressed too much, the reference to the what happened on the 22nd of July is a little bit of a red herring, because all the objections that we've raised relate to things that happened before then. I know, and yes, they said it was very exceptional what happened on the 22nd of July, but with climate change, these instances are just going to get more frequent. But anyway, most of nearly all the other instances have been, as Joanne's just shown you, were like 2015 and before then. I've lived there 13 years. In the half century of my life before I moved there, I think I had to ring up a water board once. Since I've lived in Eastriggs, I've lost count of the number of times I've had to contact Scottish Water with regard to various issues, burst pipes, etc., etc. And these weren't things just affecting my property, these were general things in the whole area. I contacted Councillor Marshall about the number of bursts. There was 14 in less than 2 years between 2007 2009. There was 36 altogether between 2004 and 2011. I've got the letter from an MSP here, Aileen McLeod, that confirms that. As has been said about, it's 1916 infrastructure for a 2017 township. And the erection of more houses in this area just exacerbates the problem. The water pressure gets lower and lower. The problems with sewerage, etc., just get greater and greater. And I just don't think it's been looked into in enough detail. You know, I think it's a bit rich, some of what Scottish Water said about it. I mean, with regard to other issues, it has been noted that there's still, shall we say, some rather harmful stuff at the MOD site. I don't know if you've contacted the MOD.
You have 30 seconds to go, sir.
It's now managed by Defence Infrastructure Organisation. I've got their phone numbers. I don't know if they've been contacted. I think they should be. And then also with regard to Scottish Natural Heritage, I spoke to them and they said, oh yes, we'll surely be contacted about this. I don't know if they have been with regard to the newts and the creatures that live down there. Other than that, I think that my concerns are just the same as what's already been raised by Alan and Joanne and others. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. McConway? In that case, would you resume your seat, please? Thank you very much. Thanks for the presentation. We now have Craig Thompson, the agent. Craig, you will have the same 3 minutes to make your presentation, and I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go just to draw it to a conclusion.
Thank you, members. I think I should first possibly go through the procedure in putting the planning application in. We went through the usual pre-application consultation process with the planning department. We had a very careful look at the settlement boundary and designed 2 cottages, well, bungalows, on the site that are within the settlement boundary. Because I like gardening, I extended it out a wee bit and made it a wee bit bigger for the second house. To go through the objectors' points, we talked about drainage and concerns with flooding. I would just simply highlight out what the consultation responses have been, that Scottish Water have no objections, and stating, as you can see from your minute, that there's sufficient capacity. I would always defer to the technical expertise of Scottish Water. In terms of the site, we will have to design it in building control to make sure that our water is neutral, as has already been referred to, and that there's various methods of achieving that with egg crates underneath the driveways and everything else. So I'm quite comfortable that that can be achieved. There was a comment regarding green belt and brown belt. Again, I would refer back to the fact it's within the settlement boundary. The false address comment was, it was an error of the council and does the neighbour notification, and I'm sorry that caused distress to neighbours, but that's one of these things that unfortunately happens, and I tried to carefully explain that at that point in time. So in conclusion, I would say that roads consulted, no objections. Flooding has been consulted, no objections. And I would hope that you would concur with the planner's recommendations and approve the application.
Thank you very much. Do any members have any questions for the agent, Mr. Thompson? In that case, if you want to resume your seat. Oh, right.
If I could just ask quickly, are you sort of upstream or downstream here in both water flow and sewage terms?
Sorry, what do you mean?
Well, is this lower than the existing properties, or?
It's lower.
It's lower.
Yeah, the street falls down.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. If there are any other questions, then Mr. Thompson, just take your seat, please. Thank you very much. Members are now in session. Ian, then David McKay.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a little concern about Scottish Water's response, as I did have a previous application today, that we are duty bound to accept that they have no objections, and yet we have documented proof here that they say there is an issue here, and it's still they're seeking to be resolved, and that's more than a year ago. Do the departments within Scottish Water actually talk to each other about when it's going for objections, or do you have any objections or not? I could ask David.
I'll ask David to reply, but I would have to say that formally, if they offer no objection, then they offer no objection, and clearly we have evidence from the lady that there is an issue surrounding this particular location. But David?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there are two distinct issues here. I can't speak for whether or not Scottish Water speak to each other. Certainly we did consult them, and you'll see on page 46, paragraph 2.2, what they're asked to address when we contact them is there sufficient capacity for water? Is there sufficient capacity in the area for their wastewater treatment works? And they've said yes to both. What that doesn't address is any ongoing issue which they would have in terms of their responsibility to neighbours next door from their existing infrastructure which is there. That is something which obviously we've seen the slides, we've seen the letters. It is concerning if they haven't yet resolved those matters when the letter gave, if not a cast iron undertaking, at least it said they were looking at it about a year ago. In pure planning terms, there is no reason why these matters cannot be got round. The proposed houses would be serviceable. They're within the settlement boundary. But clearly there is an issue which any developer of this land would have to take up with Scottish Water directly. And I would strongly suggest that they would be fairly foolhardy to proceed with putting houses on that ground without getting all those matters resolved first. But in pure planning terms, we can't think that there's any grounds for refusal in terms of the servicing.
Thanks, Ian. David McKay.
It was just, sorry, it was just in the same matter actually. It's quite concerning that there's issues there, and Scottish Water have highlighted issues to an individual a year ago, and they've done nothing about it. And there's nothing that we can do to get those problems addressed, because what guarantee is there? Well, the applicant should do it. Could we put that as a condition that this must be addressed first before any building work starts on site?
David?
I don't think you could attach a planning condition, because really the only things we need to be satisfied is that the site can be satisfactorily serviced. As to whether or not there are issues on the site which are to do with the age of the infrastructure which is on the site is a little bit different. We don't have, as a council, any authority to go in and make Scottish Water do things, I'm afraid. But if any developer were to pursue any planning permission which might be granted on this land, then clearly they would have to take that up with Scottish Water directly, because it will impinge, no doubt, on their ability to get a building warrant for the site if they can't demonstrate that it's water neutral.
Thanks, Joe. Elaine?
My point was very similar to Councillor McKee's, and I know what you're saying, but can we not place a condition that on the developer that they must liaise with Scottish Water to try to solve any problems?
David?
It's not a condition, but a standard, what's called directive, is a requirement that goes on any planning permission, which basically flags up that the developer has to liaise directly with Scottish Water to enable that the site can be properly serviced. So that goes on as a standard, and we'd certainly make sure that would happen here.
Katie, and then John.
Thank you, Chair. I too have concerns regarding the issue of the water and the sewage. However, my question is actually in relation to Scottish Natural Heritage. Can I ask why a consultation has not been done with them, as raised by one of the objectors?
David?
Thank you, Chair. Where's that? That's actually covered in paragraph 414 on page 50. Basically, the area is not identified as having any great crested newts in it. But what we're recommending is, just like I was saying before, about a directive gets attached to any permission which gives advice, saying that if, in the event of the developer finding any newts on the ground, they must contact Scottish Natural Heritage to get that addressed.
Okay, thanks, Katie. John?
Thank you, Chair. I note that it's the Council Roads Officer that was consulted with regard to this application. It is, however, a private road. Was the owner of the private road consulted, and is there any restrictions in the usage? I mean, that's 4 more vehicles that are going to be used that potentially. Is there any maintenance or any other permission sought from the private road owner?
David?
The local roads office were obviously consulted in as far as the effect on the local road network, but where you have a private road, then it becomes a private civil matter between the developer and the other owners or parties with interests in the road to resolve first. So obviously that's out with our domain, but they would clearly have to get the agreement of, I would assume, the MOD in this instance before they would be able to proceed.
Okay, we're still in session. So if there are no motions being put forward, are we agreeing the officer's recommendation in this case? Jane?
Could I just have an explanation? I mean, the conditions are there, and I noticed the directive about the newts. There isn't a directive specifically about Scottish Water. Would it be explicit? That's what I think members ought to understand, whether or not it's explicit.
David?
Yes, sorry, I should make that clear, certainly for the new members who may be not aware of this. We always put the recommended conditions in the committee reports, but there's often quite a long list of directives which are non-legally binding but are constitute advice, and they go on a planning permission. They're never actually included in the committee reports, but we would have ones here about SNH, we'd have about Scottish Water, and any other relevant matters which would need to be attached to that. But they're never actually included in your committee reports, but they would be attached.
Thanks, Jane. Patsy?
Yes, just on that, is a directive binding, or is it just a suggestion?
David?
It's not. The reason why it's not included in reports is it's basically it's advice. It's we say we'll attach copies of statutory consultation responses to that and saying that you must address the matters which have been raised here. But they're usually matters which are out with our control. So, for example, we can't legislate for something which falls under the SEPA CARS regulations or Scottish Water or SNH or any of those things. But it draws it to the attention of the applicant that these are matters that they will need to resolve when they're carrying out the development. But they're not legally binding on the planning authority. Hence, they're not conditions.
Thanks, Patsy. Okay, then, there seems to be no motion coming forward, so we're unanimously agreed to go with officer recommendation, which is to approve subject to conditions. Lucy, can you confirm the decision of the committee, please?
And I can confirm in relation to item 6, erection of 2 single-storey dwelling houses and formation of accesses at land adjacent to TEAGHLACH, EASTRIGGS, ANNAN, that members have agreed to go with the officer's recommendation and approve the application subject to conditions.
Thank you, Lucy. We move to agenda item number 7. Erection of 2 dwelling houses with attached garages, erection of detached garage and installation of septic tanks and soakaways at land adjacent to Robertland, AMISFIELD, Dumfries. It's a full application, reference 170828/full. The recommendation is to refuse, and the case officer is Billy Murray. Billy, will you take us through your presentation, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Before I go through the slides, I'd just like to update members on a couple of points and advise them of a couple of corrections in the report. First of all, there is one further letter of objection that should be added to the list of objectors in the report. That was a legitimate and timorous letter of objection from Eleanor Milne of 34 Telford Road, Edinburgh. So that makes the total number of objectors 14 rather than the 13 stated in the report. Secondly, there was one additional late letter of support received, which was only received on the 4th of September. So similar to the others mentioned in the report, it's too late to be registered as a formal letter of support to the objection, but that changes the total number of late letters of support to 13 rather than the 12 shown in the report. Just to correct one or two typographical errors in the report, in paragraph 4.3, that should actually read erection of 2 dwelling houses rather than erection of 1 in the second line. So the report says to erect a dwelling house, that should read to erect 2 dwelling houses. In paragraph, very minor, in paragraph 4.12 in the third line, the group will only be able to expand by a maximum, not be a maximum. And more importantly, in paragraph 4.15, in the final line of paragraph 4.15, that should read policy OP2, not OP1. Apologies for those typographical errors. So, to go through the slides, this is the location plan. Site to the west of Amesfield. The area in red is the application site. The area shown in blue is the other land in the applicant's control. This is a closer view of the location plan. Again, the site in red, other land in blue. An aerial view of the site. Again, a closer aerial view of the site. As much as anything, these slides show the relationship of the application site to the existing village and the nearby properties. This is without the overlay. Note the line of the former railway line, which runs from top right to bottom left. It's elevated, it's tree-lined, and as you'll see from the report, that's considered to form a defensible boundary and a defining line, so that anything beyond that line would be out with the village and therefore in the countryside. This is a view on the approach to the site from the on the C9N from the southeast. That's coming from Amesfield village out into the country. Site is on the left in that view. That's a view of the existing access that serves the existing stable. This is a view back in the other direction, again showing that access and the stable. The site's on the right in that view. The road continues on past the tree line there, through which was a former railway bridge. So that's the line of the railway line, and towards Amesfield village in that direction. This is the application site from the southeast. That's standing at the access to the stable that you saw a moment ago. This is from this, again, just another view from the same point. That's a view from the public road looking down into the site. The site's in the foreground, and beyond it is the other land that you showed, you saw in blue on the previous slides. So that's the equestrian area, the paddock, and in the far left-hand corner, the existing equestrian arena. This is the application site looking generally northwest, particularly showing the boundary between the site and the property on the right there. This is the application site looking generally south towards the other two properties at Robertland and Gowan Bray. And this is just a slide within the application site. It slopes away gently from the public road. That's looking towards the adjacent property to the west. This is from within the property, within the application site, sorry, looking back towards the public road. This is just to give an impression of the existing private access to Robertland and Gowan Foot, because the report mentions their location and mentions the private lane that serves them. As you'll note from the report, the recommendation hangs on an assessment of a small building group. So this is to show the properties that were assessed in terms of that's in the small building groups. So the first question is, are the houses well related to each other and do they create a sense of place? So this is just to show the relationship of the existing houses, that's the three shown in blue, to the application site. So that's Partridge View to the north and Robertland and Gowan Bray to the south. This is just a wider view showing the relationship of the site to the existing houses and the village. And a closer view without the overlay, you see the three existing houses at Partridge View, Robertland and Gowan Foot, the line of the former railway, and then the village to the east of that line. This is an aerial view of the same point, and without the overlays. This is a view showing the extent of the 30-mile-an-hour speed restriction area. This has been included because that was a point raised by representatives, and their contention was that that was an indicator as to what should be considered the village or not. These are the plans submitted with the application, so that's the location plan, the proposed site plan showing the two houses, site plan with topographical levels, elevations of house 1, floor plans for house 1, site cross-section and levels for house 1, section for house 1, and this is house 2, again elevations, floor plan, section and levels, section of the house itself. And in addition to the two houses, there's a detached horsebox garage, and these are the proposed elevations of the garage and the proposed floor plan for the garage and site cross-section and levels for the garage and a section of the garage itself. So, to sum up, key considerations here are effectively in two parts. First of all, to assess whether or not the site could be considered as part of the village of AMISFIELD, AMISFIELD now being designated as a village rather than a settlement, and therefore having no defined settlement boundary. The conclusion of that assessment was that the application site is not part of the village and therefore must be considered under housing in the countryside policies. The second part of the assessment therefore becomes whether or not the group of existing buildings can be considered as a suitable small building group. The terms of that assessment are set out in the report, and again the conclusion is that it is not a suitable small building group and that the proposal would therefore conflict with policy H3 on housing in the countryside. So the recommendation is to refuse the application for the two reasons stated.
Thank you, Billy. Questions for the case officer? I've got John Martin.
Right, thanks. It's just in consultations again. It's the Scottish Water consultation again. We've got there no objection in principle,
And then it's, however, they advise that currently insufficient capacity in Kettle Home water treatment works to service this development. As I say, they've not got an objection in principle, yet they're more or less saying there's no the capacity for these two houses there.
Yes, and that would have been a greater issue if the recommendation hadn't been to refuse on a point of principle.
Sorry about that. You all right, John? Okay. Any other questions for Billy? In that case, we'll come to the objectors. I've Andrew Black listed and Julie Black, and I understand Julie's had to leave. You're still here, okay. In that case, we'll have Julie first and then Andrew. Julie, you have 3 minutes, and I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go just to draw your presentation to a conclusion.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Julie Black, and I live at Partridge Cottage. I'd just like to give the opinion that this development is not essential, as the planner has just recommended. It is not beneficial. It is not a brownfield site. It's not a conversion. It's not a replacement dwelling. This is a 4.5 acre field you are considering turning into a housing site. There is no justification as it is in the countryside. There are no residential buildings in that field. Points against the development are that it is not in the village, as it's been demonstrated. The applicant is a well-known businessman. This is not a valid reason. Owning a horse is not a valid reason. Security for the horse is not a valid reason. We all go to work, we all go on holiday. Building a house will not protect his horse. Children are not a valid reason. There is no guarantee that there will be children in these houses. The children may go to private school, they may go into the town, they may not go to AMISFIELD school. We all have children. We all love to build a house for our children, but we can't go around building them in the countryside. Furthermore, there are houses, sites, plots, gardens for sale everywhere in Dumfries and Galloway. There are places for sale in AMISFIELD already that aren't actually sold. This green field is currently also used for sheep, grazing, hay, and actually it's used by the horse. Take away a substantial amount of that and the horse will suffer. It should not be considered for housing. I ask you all, everyone in here, to consider that Scotland prides itself on precious countrysides and green fields. One day, we and our children may have no green fields. Please protect this green field. Don't pass this development. Don't pass any proposed development. It's out with the village. It's in a green field. There's many supporters for the development. There's many people against it. The people that are supporters tend to be friends that aren't actually near the development. They're in the village. So I would ask again, please protect our countrysides. To Scotland, they are really precious. It's what we're proud of. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can you just wait just a minute in case there are any questions for you? Have you any questions for Julie? Any members? In that case, resume your seat, please, Julie. Thank you. And we'll have Andrew Black now. Andrew, you'll have the same 3 minutes, and I'll remind you of 30 seconds to go just to draw your presentation to a conclusion.
Hello. I live at Partridge Cottage, and I've been there for 7 years. I look over that field, and when I first arrived at Partridge Cottage, there used to be cows in that field, so there's no mention of it being a brownfield site. I don't know where that comes from. When I first got on the computer and looked at the planning application, there was 27 reasons for building this house. I thought, my goodness, what on earth, how can they possibly have 27 reasons? Well, 26 of them revolve around the horse. Now, nobody lives forever, and if that horse had to disappear tomorrow, I don't think they would replace it, because I've kept the calendar in my garage. I look onto that field all the time. And over the summer holidays, in fact, when you look at the pictures that were up on the wall, you can actually see that the horse has not been running about in that field. The grass is like this. So the horse just stands there. So it's never ridden. So I would say if that horse died tomorrow, they won't replace it. Their daughter has just left school 2 months ago. She's going off to uni. She's the only one that tends to the horse and rides the horse. So if the horse is not there, there'll be no reason to have the houses there. So it's like catch-22. If you haven't got a horse, you don't need the houses. So I can't understand why they're actually doing it. But anyway, the 27th reason was she wants to start a family. Well, she's just left the school and going to uni. I think starting a family will be the last thing on her mind. But that's all I've got to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any of the members have any questions for Mr. Black? In that case, you resume your seat, Mr. Black. Thank you. I now have Michael Cook. Mr. Cook, will you have the same 3 minutes, sir? And I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go to bring your presentation to a conclusion.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak to the committee. Myself and my colleagues really appreciate the opportunity. By way of introduction, we've lived in Dumfries for 35 years and moved to Gowan 21 years ago. It's surrounded, as you saw in the pictures, on all sides by open country, and we carefully researched the planning restrictions at the time and were assured by the planning department that no building would be allowed nearby as it is outside the village in the countryside. As you know, the proposal is for 2 very substantial houses and garages and a garage for a horsebox lorry to be built directly above our house. Because the site of the proposed houses is about 30 feet above our house, higher up the hill, they will completely dominate our house and the landscape. The Planning Application Committee report was made available to us, and it's comprehensive and balanced and summarises all the objections. For the sake of brevity, I don't want to reiterate the objections, but if I may, I would comment on them. It's noticeable that all the neighbours bordering the site felt so concerned that they wrote objection letters. All the neighbours are also unanimous in their view that the location is out with the village. It is discussed in depth in paragraphs 4.4 to 4.7 in the report. Perhaps we could take a more straightforward view based on the facts on the ground, and the site is clearly out with the village. Policy H3 is particularly important as it lists the possible criteria for allowing buildings in the countryside, and again all the neighbours are united in pointing out that none of them apply in this case. The report also rejects all these criteria. Therefore, the report very much supports the points raised by the neighbours. Can I just briefly comment on the agent's statement in support of the proposals? The first one, and therefore perhaps the most important, states the development is required to provide 24-hour, 7-day-a-week security for the horse. In this day and age, perhaps there are more practical and cheaper ways to provide security. The report states that this is not relevant under the local development plan. The second one, which has been the subject of critical comment by the neighbours, is the alleged similarity with planning permission for Wayside. Again, it is clear on the ground that Wayside is part of the village, was part of the railway station. The application was approved as part of the village under the regulations in 2005, and to allege any similarity with this proposal is merely falsifying the position to suit the argument. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. Any members have any questions for Mr. Cook? In that case, thank you, Mr. Cook, for your presentation. We now have the agent, Lawrence Wilson. Lawrence, you will have the same 3 minutes and a reminder with 30 seconds to go. Will you use your microphone, Lawrence, please?
I beg pardon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you, Chair. We'll deal with the last issue first of all, if I may. There's an application in front of me here, the garden ground at Wayside. I've never heard such nonsense in my life, and as much as the case officer says that the site is at an elevated position within the railway embankment. Wayside is located adjacent to a cluster of dwellings. My contention is that this is part of the cluster of dwellings. There's a dwelling house north of this, immediately north of this. Very large building, and it doesn't seem to have come up terribly much in the report from the case officer. It's a large contemporary building. It's a dwelling house, and it's a part of the caravan park. Now that has been approved by this authority, albeit it has a business with it, but nevertheless, it provides a residential dwelling house on the outer side of the site heading north, in the countryside. It's a caravan park, it's fine, but there's a house there. The site in the middle that we're talking about today is actually, I can call it a brownfield site, it's an infill site. There's no reason to call it lots of names. It's quite clearly an application for 2 quality houses in the area. Could we put the slides up, our photos up, please? Thanks. And there it is, or there it was. You always get it second chance, Billy. Well done. Thank you. Well, there we are. There's the house next door. So initially, we're saying that there's nothing wrong with the design. We're referring you to the local plan, which tells you that the council are looking for more houses in settlements. We know from what Andrew Robinson, the case officer, says on this application, that it's located in a cluster of dwellings, including the station house. Could we go on to the next? Oh, and we'll see the size of it, I have to say. This is a large house. Could we go on to the next one, please? This is the applicant's house, and this is what the design was based on. It's a sandstone dwelling house, and we can see the top photograph quite clearly. Vertical emphasis on windows, slate roof, chimneys on the gable. Bottom right photograph.
30 seconds to go, Lawrence.
Oh, gee, really? Bottom line, you can see how the house has been extended. Hence, the reason for the new houses. Let's extend the house. We're all under one roof. Next one, please. These are other houses of a similar nature in the area, which are very similar in design, although much older than the proposed houses. Next one, please. This is a field in the countryside, which is now a housing estate in the centre of AMISFIELD, and that's not what we're wanting. We're not asking for that, we're asking for 2 houses. But we hear the objectors saying we don't want greenfield development. If that's not greenfield development, I don't know what is.
Can you draw a presentation to conclusion, please?
Draw it to a conclusion. Unfortunately, there's not enough time to finish this, but thank you very much, Chair. I'm very much obliged to you. I'd ask if you approve the application and give it due consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence. Any members have any questions for the agent? In that case, Lawrence, resume your seat. Thank you very much. Members are now in session. If there are no questions and no proposals, are we all in agreement to go with the officer's recommendation?
Agreed.
In that case, can you confirm the officer's recommendation, Lucy, please?
And in relation to item 7, erection of 2 dwelling houses with attached garages, erection of detached garage and installation of septic tanks and SOAKAWAYS at land adjacent to ROBERTLAND, AMISFIELD, Dumfries, members have agreed to go with the officer's recommendations and refuse this application.
Thank you, Lucy. We'll come to agenda item number 8, erection of 3 dwelling houses, BLACKADDIE Road, SANQUHAR. The types of full application, reference number 7/1000/full. The recommendation is to refuse. Case officer is Claire Eckstein. Claire, will you take us through your presentation, please? Just whenever you're ready, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. The site lies to the southeast of SANQUHAR Tile Services off BLACKADDIE Road. Access to the site will be off the estate road rather than Queen's Road to the southwest. This shows the site in relation to the local plan inset map, and as you can see, it's within the area allocated for business and industry. That's the blue area. This shows the block plan of the site with the access off the industrial estate road just to the left of, on the left-hand side. The site itself, although you can't see the contours, on this plan, but you'll see that it slopes steeply from the sort of bottom southern corner up to the property up to the north, which is called Fairway. So these are the house types proposed on plots 2 and 3. And this is the house type proposed for plot 1. As you can see, they've been designed to be built into the slope. And just to give you an idea of the cross sections of the site, this is, if you look at the sort of middle section 1 with plot 2, you've got a contour height at the top edge with a fairway of 141.7 metres, which goes to 138.8 for the finished floor level, for the ground floor level, and then that goes down to 136.15 for the driveway. So it gives you an idea of the slope within the site. And this actually shows the photograph of the site with fairway at the top at a height of 141.7, and then in the bottom left-hand corner by the road, that's a height of approximately 132. And then this is just panning from the southerly road to the right, so you can see fairway and then sky view. And this is taken from the Queen's Road to the east of the site, just showing the entrance to fairway. And this is just to give you just an idea of the site, because if we're panning left from the previous photograph, you can see fairway, the application site, and then sloping down again. This is a photograph taken from the entrance to the application site, which is off the industrial estate road. The entrance will be just by where the silver car is, and the no entry signs you can see there mark the vehicular access from SANQUHAR Tile Services. And this is sort of standing, looking eastward across the site towards Fairway. This is beside the access road to the SANQUHAR Tile Services boundary. So you can see Fairway in the sort of centre marked. And then this is just panning right from the previous photograph. This just shows you its relationship to SANQUHAR Tile Services. And this is a photograph taken from the top of the garden, from the northern part. So this is actually looking across the top part of plot 1 towards SANQUHAR Tile Services, and then panning left, just looking back down the site. So I've just marked the approximate position of where the industrial estate road currently is. You obviously can't see it because it's behind the trees. And then again there you can just see panning left from the previous photograph. And this just shows the back end of back rear elevation of Fairway. And then this is looking at the front of Fairway, looking across the site down towards the River Ness, so you can see the sloping nature of the site. And again panning left from the previous photograph, and you can see the sort of SANQUHAR Tile Services building in the distance on the right hand side. So just to sum up, a full assessment of the proposal is set out in the committee report. The key issues relate to the proposed housing site not being compatible with the established industrial use, and it's not been demonstrated that it will not create a land use conflict with the established industrial uses in regards to noise, access, odour and fumes. As the photographs note, access to the site would be used the industrial estate road, which is used by the long-established business SANQUHAR Tile Services, and the site is on and next to an allocated industrial land, making the proposal contrary to policies OP1 and policy ED1. The other key issue relates to the design and layout of the proposed houses, which would also create privacy and overlooking issues to the proposed residents. The proposal is therefore recommended for refusal for the reasons set out in the report.
Thank you, Claire. Any questions, any member, any questions for the case officer? Okay, we have one listed speaker, Andrew Clark. Unfortunately, Andrew was called away, so I've agreed to allow the applicant who's with us to speak for the 3 minutes. So If John Campbell would like to come forward, you'll have 3 minutes. Where is it, John?
I'd just like to address some of the specific aspects in the report that maybe require clarification. A verbal offer for all of the land in my client's ownership was received, and this was provided with a value. This was a low value which had no reflection on the use or the designation of the land, and this was rejected as not a viable offer. The site does not materially impact on the available business and industrial land in SANQUHAR. We have consulted with environmental health and there have been a noise assessment carried out. There are no objections from the roads department. We've had no request for additional information to be provided in terms of this application. The site represents no conflict in terms of noise, access, odour, fumes, etc., and there's no material difference to the existing dwellings which are comparable in location to the existing industrial unit. We acknowledge that there is an overlooking issue regarding Plot 2 since the removal of vegetation on the boundary. This, however, can simply be addressed by amendments to the house design, although we have not been requested to do this. There is interest in this development going ahead and an ability to deliver what is much needed housing in SANQUHAR at a time when other allocated housing sites are not delivering. This is therefore a compatible development that has no material loss or impact on industrial land. I would ask members to approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you. And did you say that was a statement from Andrew Clark?
That's from Andrew Clark, yes.
Yeah, okay. In that case, we can't ask questions because it's simply a statement from the applicant's agent. So, thank you very much for that. Do any members have any questions for the applicant? In that case, if you'd like to resume your seat, gentlemen, thank you very much. Members on the session? If there are no proposals, Councillor.
In addition to the reasons for refusal, I think it's also justified in the fact that the length of the development there is such that putting there 2 or 3 houses in that would be an unwanted extension to the development of SANQUHAR village. And you've also got the noise issues and what have you from the industrial estate. And I think a refusal is the right way forward.
David, do you want to respond to that? Or are you just happy with the recommendation as it?
Yes, I'm content with the recommendation it is. I mean, obviously, if there are concerns about the appropriateness of the allocation, that's something which LDP2 can look at.
Thank you for that, Councillor McKee. If there are no proposals, then we'll go with the officer's recommendation. Lucy, can you confirm the officer's recommendation, please?
And in relation to item 8, erection of 3 dwelling houses, Blackaddie Road, SANQUHAR, members have agreed to go with the officer's recommendations and refuse the application.
Thank you. Come to agenda item number 9, erection of domestic outbuilding at KIRKLAND of RERRICK, DUNDRENNAN, KIRKCUDBRIGHT. The application type's a full application, reference number 7/1299/full. The recommendation is approved, subject to conditions, and the case officer is Beth Halliday. Beth, will you take us through your presentation, please?
Thank you, Chair. Wrong one. That one. Right, sorry. This planning application is for the erection of a domestic outbuilding at KIRKLAND of RERRICK in Dundrennan. That one, thank you. It is before you today as the applicant is directly related to Councillor Maitland. So I shall take you through the plans. This is the application site just on the outskirts of Dundrennan. Just showing the house and the considerable amount of garden around it, and the location of the proposed outbuilding. This is showing it already. There was an outbuilding there that had been damaged in a storm, and so the concrete plinth that was used for the original outbuilding is to be used again. It's slightly longer now in length than the original outbuilding. It's slightly higher in height than the original outbuilding. So this is looking west towards the village and the abbey. Because of obviously the considerable amount of trees, you can't actually see the site from there, but it's just to give you an overview of the abbey and the village. So where you can see the abbey slightly to the left of that, and then the trees in the middle, it's to the rear of those trees. And then that's in the garden area, looking at the concrete plinth that it's to be sited on. And that's standing more or less on the concrete plinth, looking towards the actual house, Kirkland of RERRICK House, which you can just see just on the left. And this is standing in the Abbey car park, and just past where the van is, just up to slightly to the rear and to the right of that is the site of the concrete plinth. And this is looking from actually I'm standing just right at the Abbey wall at that part, and again just looking, and again the van reference is just to the rear of that again. And then again, just when you turn off the road to go down to the actual Abbey site, just standing on the road there again, but again it's actually hidden behind the large trees adjacent to the road. And that was up on the road itself at the 30 limit, and you can't actually see, but just down, that's the sloping site, just down to the right is the actual site, proposed site. That was me again on the plinth, looking towards the Abbey wall, just to get a reference to the nearby Abbey. And again, just another one, just showing, just panning round slightly, and then looking to see the relationship between the site and the host dwelling house, Kirkland of RERRICK. And that was down actually at the host dwelling house, looking up towards the site, and as it's behind the mature trees. So the key considerations are summed up in the report, and this application is recommended for approval conditionally.
Any members, any questions for the case officer? Patsy?
It's just one thing, because it's in a conservation area and it's next to a Category B listed house, and you're allowing UPVC gutters and downpipes. Is that perfectly all right? So close to the Abbey, really, more than anything.
Yes, that was certainly a consideration. Had it not been in such a discrete site, then I may well have thought, that might have been a problem with it. But I think just with the discrete site, where it is within the garden, I felt that was acceptable.
Thanks, Patsy. James Mycroft, please. Any other questions for the case officer? We'd want to put a condition on it that the building's painted shocking pink or something like that. Take a look. If there are no other questions for the case officer, we're in session. Are members happy to agree the recommendation as set out in the papers? Okay. Thank you, Beth. Can you just confirm the decision of members, Lucy, please?
And in relation to item 9, erection of domestic outbuilding at Kirkland of RERRICK, Dundrennan, KIRKCUDBRIGHT, members have agreed to approve the application subject to conditions.
Thank you very much, Lucy. I have no other business. Thank you very much, members, for your attendance today.